Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto had dragon summon contract in Ruby. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by NeonZangetsu and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Awaken, defeat. It seemed impossible for an immortal. She could not die. She could not be destroyed. She was eternal. Everlasting. Invincible. No matter how many times her body was ravaged or ripped asunder, she would return. Even if they cut her to pieces and burned the remains, she would return. She had no equal. The world was hers to conquer. And so she did. From Vale to Mistral, from Atlas to Vacuo. All fell before her. None could stand against her, none could hope to prevail. They could only fall, until they brought the relics together. On the eve of her greatest triumph, a last desperate gamble by her enemies, by Ojpin and his little minions, ruined everything. She'd sought to gather those artifacts for her own purpose, but instead that purpose was turned against. A final spiteful act by an old lover. Thus did the brother gods come down and judge them all, as they'd said they would. Of course they did. Everyone was found unworthy. Of course they were. How could one measure up to the standards of a god, let alone two? It simply wasn't possible. They wiped the world clean and began anew, once again, as they'd said they would, but her once again they denied her death. In their folly, they refused to kill her once more. They said her punishment must be more severe than the last. They reduced her to a mere shadow of her former self and buried her deep in the earth where none of her followers could reach her. There she would lay for all time, forgotten by all, little more than a faded memory. And so she slept, waiting for the day she'd awaken once again, for the day that life would return to the world once more. Nothing personal, kid. 3 words. A simple set of syllables. What do you mean, nothing personal? You haven't done anything. There was nothing special about those words, no malice behind them, no hate nor ill intent to speak of, nothing that would suggest a surprise of any sort. One moment a young Naruto Uzumaki had his feet firmly on the ground as he growled up at his mentor. In the next, Jiraiya stepped forward, placed a hand on his chest, and gave him a hard shove. It was so sudden that the boy couldn't help but cry out as he hurtled backward through the brush, and even that brief moment of panic cost him dearly. Unable to compensate in time and thinking his mentor's actions little more than a prank, the poor boy never registered the danger until it was too late. By the time he realized he'd been had, he was already tumbling toward a cliff at breakneck speed. A strange sense of weightlessness overtook him as he hurtled over the edge and soared into the open air. For a fleeting moment, a sliver of a second, gravity was denied and he hung there in the air. Fool boy that he was, Naruto chose that moment to look down. Mistakes were made. Rather than the open water he'd hoped for, a bottomless pit awaited him below, rimmed with spikes, stretching out into endless blackness. By the log, he couldn't even see the bottom. It wasn't a ravine. It was a pit. He started into the abyss and to his horror, he felt something stare back at him within its depths. In that instant, he felt something brush against the back of his mind. It drank in his fear and terror like water from a broken sieve and gladly came back for more, like a starving wretch at a feast. For thousands of years I lay dormant. A voice sweeter than sin itself purred, and in his mind's eye, he glimpsed white hair. Who disturbs my slumber? Who comes into my tomb, reeking of fear? Naruto never had a chance to answer that question, because gravity sank its cruel claws into him at last, and he fell with a yelp. No, no, no! Are you kidding me? Even the canyon swallowed his cry. What the heel? Wind lashed at his face as plummeted to his demise. Blue eyes squinted against it as thin arms flailed frantically, searching for a handhold where none was to be found. Chakra-coated hands slapped against slippery rocks to no avail. His momentum dragged him past, nearly wrenching his shoulders right out of their sockets for his troubles. His head cracked against one such outcropping as he fell and his vision went red. Was it just him, or had the walls gone black? They seemed almost alive, writhing and pulsing, as though the shadows themselves were reaching. He didn't want to die here. Then fight. The voice, a woman's voice, came on again, harsh and angry. Save yourself, if you can. His fingers fumbled for a seal and failed spectacularly. Panic made his actions sloppy and the chakra slipped through his fingers. Something in the air swallowed it whole. Every bit of power he tried to muster was absorbed by the strange presence lurking below him. And all the while, the bottom of the ravine hurtled ever closer. In the distance, he thought he glimpsed a crack in the stone floor, a mighty fracture leaking strange tendrils of ink like shadow, jagged and sharp. Whatever they were, if he struck them at this speed he really would die. Do you want to live? Yes, please. He snarled. I'll do anything. Very well. A faint note of amusement etched itself in his mind. Then we have an accord. Something latched onto the last of his chakra and wrapped around it, flooding his veins with ice. Then it pulled. Pulled hard. Not a heartbeat later, Naruto Uzumaki struck the bottom of the ravine. He heard an awful crack and his world burned white until the shadows swarmed in. At the bottom of the chasm, deep within the bedrock, something stirred. The shadows began to writhe, taking on shape and form. Evil woke once again, stronger than ever before. Blood-red eyes flew open. At last! Why wasn't he dead? Naruto knew he should be dead, if only because his head was on fire, and he was fairly certain he'd cracked his skull. He knew he had landed. He'd definitely hit something near the bottom there. It hadn't been nearly as hard nor jarring as he thought. There was no awful pop of bone breaking nor cartilage crushing. If anything, it felt rather soft. Almost as if, oh dear, such a naughty child. That same, sensual voice crooned in his ear. We'll have to work on that. With a choking gasp, the boy ripped his head free from the woman's bountiful bosom, definitely a woman, and looked up. Up again. She was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. For someone who'd failed to so much as notice the fair sex until this moment, that was saying something. Blue eyes squinted open to meet red eyes rimmed by black scara gazing down at him. Hers was a pale face, skin ashen and gray, framed with red veins at her cheeks. Snow-white hair cascaded down her back in a loose wave, trailing bits of black fabric, as though it had been bound back, and only recently freed. She looked dirty, all things considered. Her dark robes were rumpled and her face was smudged with mud and blood alike. What, had she been sleeping in a cave or something? Who did that? She tilted her head and held him closer still, considering him in the faint light as they rose towards it. Wait. Rising? She seemed to find what she was looking for in his eyes, for she released him and turned aside. No aura. And yet I sensed something more. The heck is aura? He muttered, those blood-red eyes narrowed on him. Tell me, child, what year is it? Naruto told her, and it must have meant something too, judging by the absolute silence that followed. Impossible. She muttered to herself, taking her thumb between her teeth. I couldn't have slept that long. Just how long have I been asleep? Belatedly, he realized that they were still ascending. Rapidly at that. When he strained his ears, he heard the great whoosh of mighty wings carrying them aloft, bringing them closer and closer to daylight with each passing moment. This wasn't a toad. Toads didn't have wings. Even he knew that much. This wasn't a bird either. Birds had feathers. Birds didn't get this big. Those were scales beneath his sandals. Scales steeped in shadow and rimmed with bits of white bone, but scales nonetheless. No way in hell he summoned something like this, which meant, a dragon. He was riding on the head of an honest-to-goodness dragon. Just the thought of it made Naruto giddy. It should have terrified him. And it did, but that terror drowned in the relief of knowing that he was alive, that he'd be around to see another day, rather than a greasy red smear at the bottom of an abyss. All at once they broke the chasm and reached daylight. Jiraiya was waiting for them at the edge, gaping like a fish out of water. Whatever fear and dread he might have felt at the sight of the dragon vanished the moment he laid eyes on its mistress. Whoa, mama! He all but drooled, the nasty old lek. Where did she come from? She sniffed at him. Somewhere far beyond your ken. Naruto was having none of it. None. He had no way of knowing he'd been thrown down that chasm for his own good. He'd never been in real danger, as he'd been meant to truly into the fox's power of his own will and bring some semblance of it under his control. Once again, he couldn't have possibly known that. Thus, one could forgive him for being just a little angry with his mentor. What the hell, old man? Why'd you throw me down there? You nearly killed me. Wait a second. The old sage flung his hands up as the boy's fury continued to mount before him. I can explain. Can you now? Naruto's savior interjected with a malevolent smile. I think not. What's the saying you humans use? Ah, yes. Turnabout is fair play. She didn't make any hand signs. They simply weren't needed. A mere flick of her wrist summoned a great one that crashed into the old sage with no remorse and ripped him from his feet. Jiraiya went hurtling down into the ravine with a surprisingly shrill shriek. He would survive the fall. His ego would not. Naruto didn't care one bit for his fate right now. His mind was occupied with other matters. Who the hell are you? He asked. I go by many names. Destroyer. Traitor. Usurper. Mother of Grimm. But you? The woman smiled as she turned to face him, and it was a frightful thing indeed. You may call me Salem. Once more this absolute beauty, flicked her fingers, and at some unspoken command, the great dragon knelt, allowing them to disembark. You who have released me, what is your name? Naruto? It came out sounding like a question. She did not bow to him. She did not bend the knee. Why should she? Even as she thanked him, her words dripped with gentle scorn, as though she disdained the world itself. Very well then. Tell me, Naruto. Then she leaned forward and he found himself distracted by other things. What is your desire? You released me, so you surely came seeking something. Her hand touched his cheek. What is it you seek? Naruto's throat went dry. He couldn't tell her it was an accident. She'd kill him. In hindsight, he could have asked Salem for any number of things that day, and she likely would have granted him them in some form or another. He could have asked for wealth, fame, power. The word of an immortal, even one as warped and twisted as she, wasn't given lightly. Ironically, only 5 words came to mind. Some would say those words saved the world. Others claimed they ruined everything. Scholars would debate what he'd said for centuries. Looking back, he probably should have phrased his request a bit better, but he was a bit preoccupied by the literal manifestation of death and darkness looming over him. Could you stay? He croaked out and immediately flushed. I need somebody to train me, and you kinda threw my teacher down a ravine. Salem reared back on her heels and blinked at him. Once. Twice. Thrice. Excuse me? She could have told him Jiraiya was alive and well. Instead she chuckled. It began as a soft, yet rusty note of confusion, little more than a disbelieving giggle. Almost as if she'd forgotten how to laugh or what it sounded like. That was silly. Everyone knew how to laugh. Didn't they? As he looked on, Salem physically shuddered, her shoulders convulsing with barely contained mirth. He half expected her to burst out into a maddened cackle, to simply throw back her head and shriek at the skies. It never came. She simply clamped a hand around her mouth and laughed again, louder this time, yet softer all the same. My, aren't you a greedy one? Of all things you would ask, to think it would be me you requested. Shaking her head, she wiped a single black tear from the corner of an eye. How very bold of you. She purred. I think I'll keep you. In that moment, Naruto's fate was truly sealed. For better or worse, who could say? Let's get down to business. Salem wasn't a good person. She knew this. Naruto knew this. Soon the world would know it. At best the Queen of the Grim could be called chaotic neutral. At worst, downright evil. It wasn't that she tried to be bad, rather she simply didn't care for the consequences of her actions. When you were an immortal, petty things like logic and reason held no place in your life. Salem did what she wanted, when she wanted, where she wanted, and with whom she wanted. The boy before her was a prime example of this. Dodge. Naruto was given no further warning, for a storm of dark creatures straight out of the blackest nightmare drove at him from the bleak forest canopy overhead. First came one, followed by another. Another. Yet another still. An unholy rain of nevermore fell like rain upon him, beaks first, selflessly ramming themselves into the ground as they tried to skewer her charge where he stood. To his credit, the boy didn't try to stop them all. He knew better than that by now. You couldn't fight something like this. You could only run. Or in his case, evade. This again? The boy wailed. Yes, again. She admonished him as he fled. If you have enough energy to complain, then you can still fight. Naruto yanked a kunai from his pouch and whipped his body to the left as the storm of birds passed perilously close, shredding through a tree. Blue eyes bulged as they fell upon him, and then he had no choice but to move again, whirling and slashing, dodging and striking in equal measure, as he weaved through the rain of deadly birds. Salem watched him intently, reclined upon the languid form of prone Beowulf as an impromptu throne. He was improving. Slowly but surely. Until a summoned Ursa swept up and blindsided him with a mighty paw. Alwo, cease your complaining. She admonished his weakness. You wanted this. You begged to be trained by me, and thus, you will be trained the only way I know how, with overwhelming force. Her words cracked at him like a whip as he ducked under a claw. If you want power, then claim it. If you want recognition, seek it. If you desire me, well. Her smile turned coy. Then you must surpass me. Surely you can do so. You were the one to release me, after all. I expect you to excel in these so-called Chunin exams of yours. I will accept nothing less than victory. That's not fair. Her charge groaned as he toppled back into the dirt. You're immortal. How do I beat that, my dear boy? A tendril of shadow plucked him upright and set him standing again just in time for another assault. Immortality means nothing in the face of cunning. I have been beaten before. Those blood-red eyes took on a decidedly flinty expression. I can be trapped. I can be tricked, just as anyone else. I am not infallible. You will learn the same. A lone finger rose in a salute. Salem deigned to smile. He had spunk. She liked that. She'd chosen to train this one on a whim, not out of some misguided sense of pity, or any lingering sense of regret. No, she was simply curious, or so she told herself, curious about a great many things. What was chakra, and how did it work? Was it related to aura and semblances? Something new, perhaps? She wanted to see how the world had changed in her absence, and change it had. Nearly a week had now passed, and she'd yet to face a reprisal, both from the brother gods nor those that lived in this village, that might have something to do with the greater grim dragon she'd summoned. In the meantime, Naruto would learn to fight. Sink or swim. Still, it begged the question, had the brother gods been slain in her absence? Did they still exist? If so, would they send another champion now that she'd return? The thought drew a grimace from her. She didn't relish the idea of facing someone like Ashbin again. That wretched parasite could land in virtually any body and instantly be a threat. New gods had clearly come to this world while she slumbered, and in their wake, the last remnants of mankind had changed. Dust had fallen out of practice in favor of electricity. Semblance and aura were all but forgotten by the masses. Salem was certain the gods hadn't taken those away when they laid waste to the world a second time. There had been no need, and they weren't the sort to go out of their way in that regard. Likely the knowledge had simply been forgotten. Perhaps that was for the best. Perhaps the world didn't need her. Or the Grim. Nah, now that she thought on it, she pondered unlocking the boy's aura with her magic. See if such a thing were still possible after all these years. It might be entertaining. He wasn't progressing fast enough for her liking. He'd need a push. A boost, if you will. Besides, she'd grown bored of watching him suffer. Enough. She raised her voice and the swarm of Grimm ceased its assault on him. Come here, Naruto. He responded readily and limped her way, not out of fear or subservience as Cinder and the others used to, but because he was genuinely interested in what she had to say. There was no deference here. He treated her as an equal, in spite of the gap between them. Now there was a thought. Perhaps she ought to see if it were possible to revive her minions. They'd all been connected to her in some way or another, be it through a parasite, or more obvious means. Poor Cinder had been nearly lost herself to her Grimm arm by the end. Could it be done? All who were Grimm served her, thoughts for later she supposed. Her contractor was waiting on her reply. She supposed she owed him some form of praise. That was an adequate effort. She spoke the truth plainly and patted his head when he drew near. Your reflexes have improved. And they had. Despite his beleaguered appearance, he'd only been hit a handful of times. A far cry compared to his earlier, meager efforts. Such improvement deserves a reward. Naruto preened. Adorable. She'd enjoy corrupting him. Tell me, what do you know of aura? She asked. Nothing? He scratched his cheek. I suppose I should have expected as much. Her contractor had told her much of this world, but she told him precious little of what came before. Allow me to educate you, then. She raised a finger and adopted a lecturing tone. Aura is a manifestation of the soul, a life force that runs through every living creature on this world. You may think of it as a shield. A barrier of sorts. In my time, nearly everyone had aura. Do you have it? No, she shot him down. Whatever I once was before, I am Grimm now, child. I have no soul. Nah. Naruto tilted his head. I don't believe that. You're a good person. A faint tinge of pink flooded Salem's face. Well, color her surprised. The boy could be a charmer when he tried. He likely didn't even realize the effect his words had on her. Those bright blue eyes were so sharp and sure and full of hope it almost made her want to ruin him. Thankfully, she managed to check that dark impulse before it could consume her. Another darker one reared its head instead. Careful now, she crooned. If you keep that up I might lose control and devour you. So? He wriggled in place. Are you going to unlock mine? I am considering it. Salem favored him with a contemplative expression. You've shown me your potential. I expect your reserves will be massive. How are you gonna do it then? Magic, my boy. Her pale lips curled into a cruel smile. And brute force. Pale hands clamped down on his face and lifted it to meet hers, forcing those azure orbs to meet scarlet. For it is through defiance that we carve our legacy into the world. Salem spoke the word solemnly, willing the magic within her body to hearken to her call. Through this, we surpass our limits and dominate all who would stand against us. Pale blue light flickered from her fingers, threading from her palms into his body. Eternal and unfettered by morality, I release now your soul, and call thee to thy destiny. Awaken. Naruto jerked back as if he'd been struck, body shimmering a faint cerulean blue as he gazed down at his fingers. Wow. He murmured softly, curling them into a fist. I feel good. Really good. Didn't know I had this much strength in me. Naturally. Aura existed long before chakra. Now it was the queen's turn to preen. Although, now that you speak of it, She paused, touching a finger to her cheek. I'm rather curious as to what your semblance might be. You'll need to train to use it in conjunction with your chakra, of course. Naruto perked up at that. Could you do this to anyone? I could. Salem admitted. But I won't. Why not? I see no need to do so. Rather than give him the answer he sought, she summoned another Beowulf to serve as a seat and reclined upon its broad back. I unlocked your aura because I wanted to see if it was possible. Now I have my answer. Why should go around empowering the people of this village? How would this benefit me? We are already bound together, you and I. Pearly white teeth flashed at him in a grin. Forever. My fate is your fate. Really? He squawked. No, she smiled his crestfallen face and flicked a stray strand of pale hair over her shoulder. I've simply made you difficult to kill. Aura doesn't make you any more invincible than I am. Your body is still growing, but I suspect once you reach your prime, you'll be a damn sight harder to slay than most. And here I was hoping you made me invincible. He sulked, scuffing his boot against the ground. Killed you. Salem hummed softly, bemused by his petulant pout. It was just too easy to tease him, and speaking of teasing, well, she just couldn't help herself. Perhaps you deserve another reward, she said. Salem tilted her head and her body rippled anew as it had many a time before. In a flash, Naruto found himself not staring up at a regal goddess of death, but at level with a sprightly young girl nearly his own age. She watched the surprise flit through his eyes and reveled in it, read his every thought in that moment. He was startled. Fascinated. And something else. It had her licking her lips. Woo? Naruto sputtered less than eloquently. Are you what? How did you do that? Does this form not please you? She smiled and performed a little twirl, reverting to her true shape as she did so. I am immortal. Eternal. pale arms spread wide, as though to embrace the forest itself. I've learned to change my form as I please. One has to find ways to entertain themselves over the millennia, after all. Stop changing back and forth like that. Her charge yelped. Make up your mind. Salem pretended to consider his words for a moment. Now why would I do that? She grinned and shifted to her smaller form yet again. Yes, I think I rather enjoy this shape. I'll keep it for the rest of the day. It feels freeing to view the world from a different perspective. No, Naruto slapped a palm against his forehead. You're insane, and you sold your soul to me. She blinked up at him through dark lashes, silently reveling the way he sputtered and stammered. Such a boy. His purity amused her to no ends. Now stand still. Her words were suddenly a command, unyielding and stern, a sharp contrast to her earlier remarks, so much so that they had him stiffening. I shall grant you a measure of my power. Use it well. This time, her hands grasped both of his palms, fingers threading with her own. She ran her fingers over the calluses, humming softly. To his credit, Naruto tried to blink. Tried to speak. Tried to ask what she was up to. What are you doing? Salem never gave him the chance to do anything else. Why would she? Teasing aside, she found she rather liked being eye level with him. It brought back bittersweet memories. Memories of a happier time, a time when she wasn't this. It made her blackened heart twitch. Happier times indeed. Time with a husband, a family, a time when she was free. On a whim, Salem decided to indulge herself. I believe I'm making my intentions clear, she informed him primly. Then she yanked him forward and pressed her lips to his. Naruto sucked in a sharp breath through his nose, but didn't pull away. She didn't allow it. Instead she drew him closer, mouth molding against his own, tongue licking across his lips. Something shifted deep inside of her, a portion of her power parting and bending to her will once more as it flowed forth from her and into him. She did not diminish herself as Osman once had in the past, but rather she chose to share what was already hers. A surge of dark light rippled from her body and into that of Naruto's. He didn't cry out when she shared her power with him, but he did gasp. Just a little. Just a bit, and blue eyes burned red. Allow me to enlighten you, Naruto. The god of light doesn't want to kill me. You see, if I force him to act directly, I win. And if I win? He loses. He cursed me, and to release me from said curse would be akin to admitting his own foolishness. A god would never do such a thing. He will not act in the way you expect him to. If he still exists, he will use pawns, peons, proxies. He will seek to trick others with lies and half-truths, coerce them into doing his bidding. But I have allies of my own, and he will not find us lacking. Wait. Just now you said us. I said not such thing. You imagined it. Pretty sure I didn't. Aw, you really do care. Sleep now, my little prince. Tomorrow your training intensifies. A moment between two lost souls. No strings on me. The assassins came in the dead of night, as assassins are often wont to do. Salem wondered if it was a point of particular pride for them, some unwritten rule mandating any and all ninja must strike from the shadows. Perhaps there was. Who could say? Really, it all seemed rather silly to her. What point was there in attacking when you could barely see the sword in front of your face? Anyone with half a brain expected such these days. Foolish little things must have thought themselves terribly clever, striking under the cover of night. So naive. Back in her day assassins at least had some flair. She could have killed them with a snap of her fingers. Instead she waited in her bedroll as they crept closer. Naruto slept soundly only a few yards away in his sleeping bag, protected by one of her most powerful wards. Remarkably, the assassins didn't attempt to retrieve him as Salem thought they might. Not at all. No, they went for her. Initially, she wasn't sure what their intentions were until she heard the rasp of drawn steel, saw her killer's blade flicker in the dull light as it swung back toward her throat. So very slowly. In the past, many had come to kill her in both daylight and darkness. They'd all failed. Be it poison or even seduction. One of he would-be killers had been a particularly enterprising individual. None could stand against her. They'd only sent 2 men to kill her? How very insulting. She's just a child. A big brute of a man wearing an ox mask murmured. We weren't told of this. Salem nearly blinked and broke her ruse. A child? Were they blind? She was right. She hadn't reverted to her proper form. She squinted in the shadows to find his partner, spying magenta hair hidden behind a cat mask. Oh? Her eyes drifted lower. Widened. Not a man then. A woman. Well, good for her. They were both going to die all the same. It doesn't matter, Ox. His partner hissed. She's a threat to the village. She dies. Those weren't our orders, Cat. She heard something shift behind her. To hell with orders. Orders got hate killed. The Queen of the Grim gave her would-be victims a stay of execution as they bickered back and forth, the better to ponder. Anyone skilled enough to slip into the forest of death and evade the horde of Grim within, not to mention that bloody dragon, was either strong, foolish, or some heady combination of the two. She could use that. He contractor was growing in strength and power every day, but at the end of that day, he was only one person among many. Granted, he could field a small army, he still had his limits. Until she shattered said limits, he would be weak. Vulnerable. Could these two hurt her? Unlikely, but she confessed herself curious. She had yet to test herself since coming to this world. Blasting that fool into the ravine didn't count. When the woman drew her blade, Salem didn't even deign to rise. She let the blade rise and fall upon her neck, reveled in the brief flash of pain that followed, and went still. It was good cut, Salem thought. Swift. Efficient. Clean. Her poor neck never stood a chance. The impact alone sheared her head from her shoulders and sent it spinning into the undergrowth. Her body stiffened for a moment, and went slack, like a forgotten puppet severed from its master's strings. Left behind to rot, and yet Salem did not die. Her curse forbid it. As she knew it would, a faint pulse of light regrew her body from the neck down, another made her whole again, a third restored her clothes and had her rising from the bushes with a put-upon sigh. Honestly, these children. She tried to behead herself ages ago. It hadn't worked back then, and it wouldn't work now. It only left her with another corpse to dispose of. Her own. She rolled her shoulders and cracked her neck, producing a silent pop in the base of her spine as she stretched. She could have made herself known in an instant. Instead she cloaked herself in a shadow spell and listened from her new cover. You didn't have to do that, Yugao. Oxmask shook his head slowly. Ah. A gentle soul, then? Just like Hazel. Perhaps he might prove useful after all. Yes, I did. The woman sheathed her sword with a bloody flourish. The only good enemy is a dead enemy. We could have taken her in. The giant butted his shoulder against hers, driving his compatriot back half a step. Questioned her. No. The now named Yugao rounded on him with a hiss. Hey, tried that. He died for it. Besides, we were given bad information. She died just like anyone else. A small smile plucked at the corner of Salem's mouth. Well. Seemed a certain someone was meddling where he shouldn't be. He could have been anyone. The god of light, Ozma, or even that senile old fool who led the village. She couldn't afford to make assumptions. One wrong move and she risked uniting this entire village against her, if not the world. A few fragmented attacks she could handle at this stage. But anything resembling a coherent front was to be avoided until she could fortify her position. She didn't want to be bested again. But she couldn't let these two walk away either. They would take Naruto. They would undo nearly a month of hard work. Losing her contractor? No. That was unacceptable. She gathered legs beneath her and leaped. Didn't mean she couldn't have a little fun with them, though. Surprise. Salem would forever remember the large one's reaction when she landed on his shoulders, kicked his companion away, and leaned over the man's broad back to sneer at him. He stiffened beneath her. As well he should, the braggart. She could well imagine how she must look to the poor fool, silver hair framing her pale face, hanging upside down with her self-same sneer. While she might physically resemble a little girl, her smile was that of a grown woman, a cruel and twisted thing. Tyrion's madness always paled in comparison to her own. And that wasn't even the high point of her evening. That wasn't very nice of you, you know. She cooed, squeezing his cheeks. You let your companion kill me. What if I died? She could see the gears turning in his brain in confusion. Woo, indeed. His fear was delicious. A girl could get drunk on this. Get away from him. Do sit down, dear. Your betters are talking. When his companion tried to rise, Salem flicked a lazy finger in her direction. Dozens of shadowy tendrils burst from the dark at their mistress's command and yanked Yugao backward. One found her mouth, another took hold of her legs. Still, she left the poor girl's sword arm unbound if only to give her false hope, to watch that hope wither and die. The woman drew her blade and desperately tried to saw at them, to no avail. She wouldn't be breaking through that any time soon, which left the queen with her prey. Now then, Salem hummed. What to do with you? The Oxambu gulped. I don't suppose you'd be willing to talk this out between us? Salem's smile didn't waver as she leaned over him. Would you be willing to do the same if I invaded your home and attacked you? Technically speaking you did? Irrelevant. She grabbed him by the face. This forest is my home now. You're the one trespassing. Although the man's mask hid his expression from her, Salem felt his terror all the same. Lurking just beneath the surface, held in check by sheer willpower. He'd seen her die, but for all his anxiety, he didn't cry out. Even as her fingers dug into mask and found the flesh beneath, even when that hardened porcelain beneath it began to fracture and crack, still he didn't scream. Do your worst then. She heard him grit his teeth behind it. My will is strong. Is it now? Salem's smile was just the wrong shade of vicious. Let's test that, shall we? She gripped both sides of his head with her legs and flung herself forward, levered her victim face first into the ground with a vicious crunch. She heard what remained of his mask shatter as she climbed off him and glided some distance away. That wouldn't be enough to kill him, surely. She counted to 3 and sure enough he rose, clutching at his face with one hand. She glimpsed a bearded face, and a lone eye of purest silver gleaming back at her through parted fingers. This is nothing. For only the second time since her rebirth, Salem stopped smiling. Those damnable eyes again. The words tore out of her with a hiss. Well. Today's just full of surprises, isn't it? She raised her hand and prepared a spell to pop the large one's head, only to stumble as something slapped her back from behind. The spell yielded out of her grasp, turning her magic sluggish. Her expression turned bleak as she realized who had struck her. She frowned and looked down, searching for the source. A lone knife jutted from her shoulder. Really, now? Her right eye began to twitch toward Yugao. That's just petty. Bite me. When she sought to pry it out and take a step forward, her legs buckled, sending her slamming down onto her knees. Pale fingers twitched into fists at her sides as incredible pain racked her flesh from head to toe. She felt ill. Sick to her stomach. Everything began to spin, and what little she'd eaten this evening threatened to come boiling back up her throat all over again. Anyone else would have panicked. She felt only a detached surprise as her every muscle clamped down. Poison? Maybe these two weren't so foolish after all. Resistance is futile, I'm afraid. The man-ox raised a hand in some silent sign she didn't recognize. That venom could drop an elephant. I'd asked Yugao not to use it. He made another sign. May you find peace in death. Salem's amusement shriveled up faster than vacuole. Peace, you say? Peace? Peace? She reared back with a hiss. You dare speak to me of peace? She drew her stiff fingers back, gripped her right arm by the elbow with trembling fingers and used it as leverage to force compliance from her traitorous limb. Ox balked at her, and she used that moment of confusion to strike. Pale fingers plunged through her chest to find her heart. She grasped it, tore it out and flung it down at the Umbu's feet, casing him to shrink back in disgust. You would kill yourself? Salem sagged and leered at him with bloody teeth. Not quite. Sure enough, her death activated the god's curse, denying her rest. White light flowed across her body like milk, closing the gaping hole in her torso, restoring her body to its physical prime. All toxins and poisons were purged by the light that bound her, anything that might harm her removed and cleansed. Salem rose swiftly, shadows steaming from her shoulders as she stalked forward. Strong fingers gripped the knife's hilt, and ripped it free from her flesh, casting it aside with a visceral spatter. I am banished from death. Her remaining wounds closed in an instant, and her hand lashed out, seizing the throat of her would-be assassin. She lifted him from the earth as though he weighed no more than a child. The man gurgled, hands flying to her limb, to no avail. He couldn't pry her hands free. Dark eyes bulged behind his mask as the goddess of the grim gripped his windpipe and squeezed, cutting his breath off in a rattling wheeze. Meaty fingers pried at her face, and she scoffed at his weakness, unflinching as he tried to push her away. So fragile these mortals. Without any aura, they broke so easily. And you? She leaned forward, her lips brushing the outer lobe of his ear, drinking his fear in like a fine wine. I had planned to kill you, but I think your body will prove more useful. Her grin turned crueler still, full lips curving into a ghastly grin. You see, there's something I've been meaning to test. Bale fire burned white-hot in her offhand, glowing a pale blue. I told you I was banished from death, no? She cocked her head to one side, holding up that gnarled green flame for him to see. It danced in his wide eyes, burning impossibly bright as cradled it loosely in her palm like a tiny babe. In a sense, the same applies to those who serve me. She drew the words out, savoring the Umbu's confusion. His fear. She wouldn't be afforded such a banquet again for quite some time. Come the end, I ripped their souls away and stole them for myself. I suppose you could say it was petty of me. And yet, blood-red eyes drifted lower, falling to his chest. What we have here is a rare opportunity, one that might not come again. You rather resemble an old henchman of mine. Ironic, no? Oh dear, the man's face was turning blue. I dare say you're the perfect fit for him. Best not to kill him yet with that in mind. She slackened her grip, allowing him to draw in a rasping breath. I could torture you for information, but I suspect you won't break, much less serve me willingly. A pause followed as she considered the matter. Will you? No. She watched the muscles bulge in his neck. My loyalty is to the leaf. Do your worst, woman. Salem inclined her head. I believe you. For what it's worth, I respect your resolve. Unfortunately for you, you no longer have a say in the matter. Her palm gently pushed into his chest, forcing the flame into Ox's flesh. The man shuddered and shook with every inch, his body convulsing in her grasp while she forced the tiny ember deeper. Naturally, the Umbu resisted her with all his might, body and soul, hissing and spitting and thrashing and kicking out at her. But his will was no match for hers. He had but 30 summers to his name. She had many more. She brushed his resolve aside and withdrew her still shimmering arm, frowning as it became corporeal once more. With the deed done, Salem dropped him. The once masked Umbu didn't even think to attack her. He balked, hands flying to his chest as he patted himself down furiously. Behind them, Yugao cried out furiously, cries muffled against her gag. Salem ignored the foolish twit, instead watching her victim intently as fear and terror warped into confusion, and then aha! There it was. Hope. She always loved crushing that. It made the soul-crushing despair that followed all the more potent. What have you done to me? The ruined Umbu rasped. I? Salem tilted her head. I have done nothing. Hazel, on the other hand. Ox twitched. His face convulsed. Who is Hazel? I don't understand. I feel oh gods. His right arm flew up to seize his throat, fingers crushing against his windpipe with superhuman strength. Ox cried out and grabbed it with his left, only for that limb to betray him too. His legs kicked out wildly and threw him backwards once more, back slapping against the ground as he collapsed into a fresh fit of seizures. Silver eyes bugled as he gasped for words that wouldn't come. The screams that followed were hideous. It would have been kinder to kill him, to simply snap his neck like brittle kindling and cast his corpse aside for the maggots. Salem was not kind. Bones cracked as the Umbu's body twisted and shifted, making way for the new soul within. The same soul that was even now ruthlessly strangling Ox from existence. Skin rippled as the already large man gained yet more mass still, acquiring corded muscle atop that of what its host had already worn. His face changed and shifted, no longer his own. Skin rippled, betraying him with each passing second. 30 seconds elapsed before the screaming ceased. Without warning, Ox went limp, his cries cutting off. His eyes turned glassy for a moment, then hardened. Sharpened. Gained focus. Resolve. He set his jaw, pulled his hands away from his throat, and used them to push himself upright once more. Rising on trembling legs, the man who had once been known as Ox steadied himself and looked left. He looked right. His gaze passed over the still-bound Yugao for a fleeting moment, then ignored his former companion altogether. Then he saw Salem. For a moment, Salem wondered what he would do. Hazel's grudge had ever lay with Ozma, not the world. As far as she knew, Ozma wasn't here and would never return to this world. Hazel might be happy to learn that truth. Compared to the others, he was remarkably simple to understand. Cinder lusted for power and would push too hard, too fast. Watts wanted someone to stroke his ego. Tyrion was just mad. Hazel was by far the lesser of 4 evils. But his strength and semblance were needed here. A giant fist crashed into the ground as the giant knelt before her and bowed his head low. My queen. He sounded just as she remembered him. What do you wish of me? Salem patted his head. Welcome back, Hazel. There is much to do. He gave her an odd look at that, but didn't question her, nor did he pull away. Good boy. He remembered his place. Explanations would come later. For now, there was no time, and there were loose ends to tie up. She doubted she'd find someone quite like Cinder or the others anytime soon. She wasn't even sure she wanted to try again. The ritual had left her weakened, almost alarmingly so. She would need time to recover. Rise. I would have you guard that boy. She gestured flippantly to Naruto, still blissfully unaware of the world as he slept within her ward spell. I have tasks to attend to. I will answer your questions come morning. That seemed to mollify him somewhat, for he stood and lumbered toward her contractor. As you say. Now then, blazing scarlet eyes snapped to his companion. What to do with you? You do realize I can't allow you to leave here. At some point, Yugao had finally cut herself free. Now she raised her sword in defiance. She did not run. She did not retreat. She stood firm in the face of death, tears running down her face behind her mask. Fool of a girl. She should have fled when she had the chance. Was she paralyzed by fear or no? She was moving again. Poor girl. Monster, what did you do to Ox? He should be grateful. I gave him a purpose. Yugao rushed her with a wordless battle cry, blade raised high. Salem scoffed, and assumed her true form in a rush of dark light. A bare palm slapped the blade from Yugao's hand when she struck at her even as another grabbed the Umbu by the face. In a single seamless movement the Queen of the Grim pivoted on one heel and pinned her against the first tree she encountered. Pale fingers ripped aside the shinobi's mask with ease and dug into the right side of her face, steadily applying pressure to the sensitive iris beneath. Wait. Pressure. Tell me your name, child. It wasn't a question. Go to hell, demon. No, no, no. That wouldn't do at all. She'd had her fill of defiance tonight. Salem tightened her grip and the young woman buckled with a keening whine. Her legs kicked wildly in the air as her entire body thrashed anew in a vain attempt to escape. Still, the immortal didn't relent. Her fingers hooked into claws, ready to rip and tear. I'm sorry, did you think I was asking you? Yugao Yuzuki. Her prey rasped. There. Are you happy now? Just kill me. That would be easy, wouldn't it? She couldn't think of any real use for this one and no desire to repeat the ritual. By rights she should simply slay her. If she let her go now, she'd undoubtedly report to her superiors. Yet a fresh thorn of curiosity stayed her hand. These were the first visitors she'd suffered in nearly a month. It would be remiss of her to waste such an opportunity. Hazel could be grilled for information at a later date, given that he possessed Ox's mind and memories. On a whim, she decided to satisfy her curiosity. A strange name. She hummed. Tell me, what do you seek in life? An ugly thought occurred to Salem then. Why are you here, child of the leaf? I thought I made it clear that I wasn't to be trifled with back in the ravine. We were sent here to retrieve Uzumaki Naruto. Yugao whimpered. Salem didn't relent. She dare not. And who sent you? The Hokage. Well, that didn't help her at all. Was she speaking the truth? Yugao certainly seemed to believe it was. Which meant it might not be Ozma's work. But it could be. Blast it. She'd been hoping to find answers, but it didn't seem as though she'd be getting them. In any case, killing clearly hadn't been part of those orders. This little minx had been the one to escalate things. If she'd simply tried to snatch Naruto and run, she would have simply tanned the girl's hide and sent her packing with a good spanking. None of this would have been necessary. You seem to believe those words. How quaint. That boy isn't yours to claim. Yugao snapped. Wrong. The words slammed down any hope of defiance, causing her prey to wilt. He is mine. We made a pact, he and I. He is mine, and I am his. Until death did them part. Not even the gods themselves could break such a binding oath as this. I will release him in the coming days, but even then he belongs to me. You will not take him, you will not touch him. You will not come here again. Pale hands pinched her cheeks. Now I will ask you once more. What do you seek? Bloodshot eyes seared into her own. Your death. How precious. She wanted to be cute, did she? Salem cutely rattled Yugao's skull against the tree for it. Lie to me again and I'll open you from your belly to your brain and feed you your intestines. She hissed into the starstruck woman's ear. Or perhaps you'd rather lose your eyes? I hear blindness is all the rage these days. No? Her lips pursed into an irritated scowl when the Umbu frantically shook her head. Then tell the truth, would you kindly? Yugao's head lolled to the left in her grasp. When she spoke, it was a whisper. NC. Salem strained to hear it. I'm sorry I didn't catch that. Vengeance. Aha. Now they were getting somewhere. For whom? Salem twisted her face viciously. Yourself? Your family? A lover? What will you feel when you avenge them? Shame? Horror? Power? Yugao grit her teeth, her face twisting. Salem wrenched her neck and bared her teeth. Answer me. Justice. The woman's voice broke into a sob. Retribution. Her head snapped forward to slam against Salem's with snarl, drawing a startled blink from her captor. I'll make that bastard suffer for taking hate from me like that. Then I'll put his head on a spike. Now kill me or don't, because I swear by the log, if you mock me one more time. Oh, you poor thing. Salem unbent enough to pat her cheek. You lost your beloved, didn't you? Someone took him from you. Bright eyes blinked rapidly. What? She knew that feeling well, felt she could empathize with that kind of pain. Agree with her even. Ozma may have turned against her in the end thanks in no small part to the gods, but this woman's love had been stolen away by fate itself. Killed, murdered in the coldest of blood. Nothing else could possibly instill such seething rage in one quite so young. It drove her. Motivated her. Made her pliable. It was so easy to recruit others when you knew what they wanted. It was why she often preferred the carrot to the stick. Men and women lined up to serve you when you promised them their heart's desire. On a whim, Salem made her choice. The girl rather reminded her of Cinder. She simply sought retribution instead of power. She was rather curious to see what would happen here. Just what sort of delicious despair would Yugao create in search of revenge? Would she find a new purpose once she had it? Would she break? Something else? The thought left her trembling with anticipation. Moreover, she wasn't willing to risk returning Cinder to the world. Not yet. How far would you go for your vengeance? She wrenched Yugao's face back to hers. What would you be willing to sacrifice? Yugao was still in her grasp. You're lying. You can't help me, poor unfortunate soul. So sad. Such a shame. Don't mock me. I would us a spell to locate him for you. A small smile wreathed Salem's face as her captive went still beneath her. But there is a price. Spell? Magic? Yuzuki blinked rapidly, not quite comprehending what she'd just been told. Do you mean a jutsu? Ugh. Red eyes rolled. You blasted people and your terminology. Call it what you will. How can you possibly do such a thing? My powers are far beyond your understanding. Yugao set her jaw still and Salem hastened to cut her off before she had a chance to mount a verbal counterattack. Now describe your beloved to me. How did he die? In what way was he killed? Spare no detail, no matter how scant. I would know his face. Yugao spoke freely. Words flowed from her lips as she painted a picture of her beloved's death, his words to her the night before, everything. Salem listened intently to her captive, both bemused and silently furious in the same measure. What manner of fool rushed into death alone? Even Ozma wasn't fool enough to face her alone after their first spat. Yet this man had told his beloved where he was going, what he was doing, and expected to return despite the fact. Did his arrogance know no bounds? Reluctantly, Salem released her captive. Be still. Yugao could have bolted, but she didn't. Her desires held her captive, stronger than any cage. By contrast, the scrying spell proved easy for Salem. Effortless, even. Any half-decent mage could have used one during the Age of the Gods. She could pull images from the very air itself and did so now, if only to prove a point to the stubborn shinobi still wriggling in her grasp. She trained her skills well beyond morality, and Yugao had left a wealth of information dangling at her fingertips. It was the work of minutes to find the knowledge she sought. The fool hadn't even tried to hide his handiwork. She knew his name now. Baki. A ninja of the sand. Was that important? She wasn't sure. Yugao watched the moment of her beloved's death with ashen eyes, saw the scene replay time and time again. What is his name? Once it finished, she grabbed at her. Where is he now? Salem chuckled. Did she expect her to give such information freely? Silly girl, swear yourself to me. She thrust her hand forward, causing the bereft woman to bounce back and reach for a knife. Swear to guard my contractor until he is of age. Swear that you will speak of what you witnessed here to no one. Promise me this, and his name is yours. A coy smile touched her lips. Why, I'll even tell you where he is sleeping at this very moment. Vengeance is just a discreet knife thrust away. My loyalty is to the leaf. Yugo pursed her lips. Yes, yes, as you're all so fond of telling me. Salem forebore the urge to roll her eyes. I'm not asking you to betray your precious village. A pale finger rose between them and her potential minion watched it, tracking that snow-white digit like an angry hawk. Good. She should, merely to honor the terms I've laid out for you. Nothing more. When Yugo still didn't budge, Salem honestly considered blasting her for a moment. She needed the girl to be willing, or she'd never accept her offer. Such a pact could not be forced. Honestly, if I had even a single minion like Yushinobi, I would have conquered the world by now. I can find him on my own. Said Kunoichi bridled. You've shown me his face. Perhaps you could. Salem allowed with a patient smile. She could sense her resolve crumbling. Perhaps not. Yugao's face twisted as she preyed upon her doubt. What if he slips away? What if he goes into hiding? Each word widened the rift in her heart. Knowing his name, and where he lays his head at night would open doors for you. Every sentence knocked bricks out of her wall of resistance. Doors that might otherwise remain closed if you reject my offer. The woman's eyes fluttered shut, and she knew it. She had her. Well, are you willing to risk it? Salem leaned forward, lips brushing her ear. Without my help, you may never avenge your beloved. Yugao's palm all but slammed into hers. Salem's grin turned vicious. Yes. Her newly claimed Umbu noticed the sudden shift in her smile, but it was too little too late. Salem's fingers were iron against hers as she pulled her close. Bright eyes widened as something shot down the woman's arm and into hers, burrowing beneath the flesh of her wrist like a beetle. Yugao grit her teeth against it, one eye snapping shut in a wince as crashed down to a knee. But she did not let go. For that she earned some semblance of respect from Salem. Well, inasmuch as she could trust someone. What sorcery is this? She hissed. Why, I've merely sealed our pact. Salem pulled her arm away with a hum, content in her victory as the girl glowered at her. What is done cannot be undone. Poor thing looked more resigned than betrayed at that, suggesting she'd suspected as much. Should you attempt to speak of this night to anyone save me and my allies, you will die. She'd still made a deal with the devil anyway. How quaint. She must truly desire revenge. That grim parasite will silence you before the words leave your tongue. Grim? Yugao grimaced, but didn't challenge her. A pity that. Perhaps she had more sense than she let on. More than Cinder, certainly. The man you seek is named Baki. Salem held up her end of the bargain, rattling off the information that had been burned into her brain. You will find him at the following address. You will find him heavily guarded. I would recommend waiting until that thing isn't nearby. Tomorrow would be best. Yugao scowled at her. May I leave then? Salem smiled indulgently. You may. I'll see you tomorrow. The Umbu flinched, but didn't look back as she picked up her sword. She didn't dare. Her choice had been made. Salem watched the battered girl's stiff back as she bent to retrieve her mask, dusted it off, and donned it once more. Only then did she turn to face her. Bright eyes swept past Salem, glancing toward Hayes, who had continued his lonely vigil over Naruto. Perhaps sensing her gaze, the berserker looked up. Their eyes met. An ember of recognition stirred there. Yuzuki gripped her sword until her knuckles turned white. Do not throw away her mercy. Hazel intoned. She rarely offers second chances. His words hit the swordswoman like a physical blow, and she fought down a flinch. It shouldn't be this way. Yet it is. The giant shrugged, either unaware or simply uncaring of her ire. For what it's worth, I'm glad she didn't kill you. Life is precious. In another life, Salem might have pitied the poor girl. Perhaps even tried to console her. Now? She was too tired to care. If she stopped to mourn ever and she trod upon, she'd be swimming in a river of tears. Hazel was easily worth 10 of some faceless Umbu whose name she couldn't even be bothered to remember. Had she even asked it? The concept of Ox had already begun to fade from memory. One more encounter among many in eternity. By tomorrow, she doubted she would even remember the man whose soul she had destroyed. Ox, Salem frowned, is gone. Only Hazel remains. You're a monster. Yuzuki whispered. Was that her hang-up? Such hypocrites, these shinobi. Am I? Salem afforded her a slow blink as she drew herself up to her full, towering height. You may be right. Perhaps I am. At least I'm honest about it. She shrugged when the Umbu didn't take her hand from her sword. I do not seek to destroy solely for the sake of it. The fault there lies with you. How? You killed Ox. Yes. I did. Red eyes narrowed on her. And had you retreated rather than attack me like a selfish child, I would have let you be. Yuzuki made a choking sound. You make it sound like we're the ones to blame here, because you are, silly girl. I am not your enemy. Go. Now. With one last longing glance at the being that had once been her teammate, Yuzuki sheathed her blade and fled away into the night. Salem watched her go and counted the seconds, stretching out her senses as she watched her through the eyes of countless Grimm lurking in the trees and the forest beyond. 5, 10, 15. She finally relented when the woman finally broke the tree line and escaped back into the village. Only then did she spare a glance for Hazel. Do you remember her? She asked. Difficult to say. The giant turned away from his vigil and rose to his full towering height. I feel nothing for her. This body, however, does. She was a friend to its original owner. He thumbed his chin in thought. I think he would be glad that you spared her. For some reason his praise pleased her. She rather liked the feeling. Salem offered a small shrug. Enough of this sentiment. I need you to keep watch over my body for a moment. May I ask why? She grinned. I need to have a chat with someone. He nodded silently. As she said, there was much to be done, and little time in which to do it. Dropping to a knee, Salem touched a hand to the still sleeping Naruto's stomach, and the seal within. Red eyes narrowed to thin slits as she began to work her magic. Not to restrict the array, of course, and she certainly couldn't release it. She lacked the power to do so. No, for once, her intentions were actually somewhat benign. Now then, where is that blasted fox? Aha! Her vision blurred. Darkness met darkness in a rotten cage. So, Salem hummed, gazing up at a living incarnation of destruction. We meet at last. You can stop playing dead now. Naruto is fast asleep. Silence reigned supreme. For a fleeting moment, Kurama honestly considered ignoring the Queen of the Grimm solely out of spite if nothing else. It was something he'd already done before. Theirs was something of an unspoken agreement. In the beginning she'd let him be, and so had he, her. She clearly knew better than to try and hit outside of her weight class, and he wanted nothing to do with a woman who could summon monsters, let alone charm others with her silver tongue. Oh yes, he was well aware of her tricks. After all, he'd just seen some of them in action. He'd had a good chuckle watching the Queen of Grimm browbeat that Umbu into submission, not the soul-smashing bit. That was concerning. Don't ignore me, beast. Salem's voice cut through his thoughts. I know you're in there. Wake up. We don't have time for this. Don't think I haven't noticed what you meddling with my host, demon. Behind the bars of his cage, a giant eye opened as he stirred once more. Why have you come here? Surely not to fight me. Even you would not be that foolish. No, no, no. Perished the thought. The goddess of Grimm spread her arms and granted him a sly smile. I've come to bargain. I think we can help each other. Rusty laughter shook the world, turning that smile into a scowl. Kurama couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed. When had that been? He couldn't remember. Ages, at the very least. Kushina hadn't been able to draw so much as a chuckle from him. Nor had Mito before her. No, he remembered now. He hadn't laughed since the sage. He wasn't sure he liked how it sounded. And this one was joking, surely. What could she possibly give him? You have nothing I want. With a final sigh he turned away from her and laid down once more. Begone. This conversation is over, don't I? Her voice called to him, almost enticingly, heedless of his ire. How does your freedom sound? He turned and pressed his snout to the bars. You cannot grant me such a thing. No, Salem admitted freely. But I know someone who can. You dare? Something in those words set Kurama off and he lashed out at this vile temptress with all his might, driving a mighty paw against the bars. Curved claws stabbed outward through the gaps between, passing well within an inch of Salem's visage to blast her hair back from her face. The water at her feet evaporated, hissing into angry steam to sting at her pale visage. She didn't so much as bat an eyelash. Did you know I was a mother once? Salem spoke slowly, drawling into the silence that followed. I raised 4 girls before they were taken from me. They were far more terrifying than you. Kurama peered through the bars, giving this creature a second look. He didn't like what he found there. He'd seen evil in his day. He'd fought against more than a few in his prime, even been called at a time or two himself during his rampages. He knew what it meant to be feared and hated, loathed and cursed. He knew evil. Some said he embodied it, though nothing was further from the truth. This was not evil. This was death itself. Here stood a broken woman, a being denied her rest time and time again until something finally snapped. A creature poked and prodded to the brink of insanity. He could see it in Salem's eyes. She wore her mask well, but there were cracks in it, fractures keen eyes could see. Salem might smile and act like the doting parent or a gentle lover, but it was a ruse. She pretended to have emotions, played at being something she wasn't. She lived for chaos and destruction, for lies and entertainment, nothing more. And yet somewhere in that stone heart of hers, she felt something for his fool of a host. That was the only reason he hadn't bothered to intervene yet. What are you, cursed? Salem's lips peeled back in a silent snarl and for a sliver of a second, those angry red veins seemed to pulse in her face. Damned by the gods to walk the earth forevermore. You cannot kill me, beast. Not for good. The gods themselves cannot kill me. I cannot kill me. However, black flames leaped to her fingers as she spread them wide, angry and hungry alike. I can hurt you, HRMPH. A gust of hot hair greeted her. Empty boasts. I speak only in truth, and I have had eons to perfect my craft and grow in power. She intoned, eyes burning red. Believe me when I say that, while I cannot necessarily kill you, I could cause you great pain. The only reason I do not is because I see no need to do so. Our interests are better served as allies than enemies. Do not test me. She'd do it too. She might not be able to do half of what she claimed, but this madwoman was mad enough to try and had nothing left to lose. That made her dangerous. She could hurt him at the very least, and within the seal he had no way of fighting back. It would be a different tale if they met on the battlefield. Here, in his limited capacity? Not so much. What do you want, then? He growled. What do I want? Salem parroted the words back at him with a smile. It reminded Kurama of a shark. That's a loaded question, isn't it? I want so many things. So very many things. She released a viciously short breath and the flames fled from her fingertips. I want vengeance. I want justice for my children. I want the rest that has been denied me for thousands of years. I want an end. Here at last Salem's voice broke and Kurama glimpsed the tortured creature lurking behind her facade. She concealed it quickly, yet the old fox saw. He knew. But since I can't have any of those things? The mask slid back into place as she smiled once more. I'll settle for Naruto. At least he offers me entertainment. Ah, and now they came to the crux of the matter. What is he to you? As I said, entertainment. Slim shoulders rose and fell in a lazy shrug. He was the first in eons to ask for my help. Me. The living embodiment of evil. Can you believe it? She shook her head and touched a finger to her cheek, silently amused by some joke he didn't understand. We have a contract, he and I, a bond that will not break until his death. Yes, he'd sensed the damn thing. Meddlesome magic and irritating oaths. It was that which granted him a fragment of her power. Through it, she was making the boy strong, not an entirely unpleasant thing, that. Naruto didn't cry or shout or whine anywhere near as much as he'd done at the beginning of the month. That alone was an improvement. You intend to kill him, then? That would be problematic. It would take years to recover from the loss of a host. Heavens, no! A peal of delighted laughter burst from Salem's lips, surprising him. I dare say I fancy the boy. He's the first person to make me feel something and well, forever. Was that a faint hint of pink in her cheeks just now? No, surely not. I'm curious to see what he might become, given time. Her brow turned stormy. As such, his death or humiliation would displease me. On that they agreed, at least. Insufferable wench. Kurama laid down once more, setting his jaws atop one paw as he regarded the small creature before him with the full weight of his gaze. I suppose it would be too much to ask what your plans are beyond the Chunin exams? Not at all. Salem waved a red-veined hand at him. That's merely a means to an end. You see, my true goal is, she told him, and his mouth clicked open for the merest of moments. Kurama snapped it shut 5 minutes later as she finished. And that's how it ends. You're certainly ambitious, even for an immortal. I'll give you that much. He shook his head slowly, mind still whirling from what he'd just been told. Ambitious didn't even scratch the surface of what she'd said. By the 9, this woman was greedy. You do realize this plan of yours has a good chance of blowing up in your face, don't you? If even one thing goes wrong, you'll be in trouble. Never mind if those gods of yours interfere. My dear, I'm counting on it. A note of silence passed between the two almighty beings once more. Earlier, you asked me what I wanted. Salem's grin bordered on feral as she pressed her face against the cage, red eyes blazing in the dark. I've just told you, if I have my way, that boy will take the entire world by storm, no matter what is thrown his way. Do we have an accord then, mongrel? Kurama snapped at her. As if I would enter such a pact with you, Salem frowned. Although there is an old saying I'm fond of, the frown fled. The enemy of my enemy is my friend? Now it was Kurama's turn to grin. I like the way you think. Naruto knew Salem was in a good mood the moment he woke the next morning, because the Queen of the Grim was humming to herself. Actually humming. She never did that. Never. Ever. Her smile usually meant death for him, or worse, that she was going to up his training. Yet there she was, all but singing as she worked. It set off all sorts of alarms in his head, for all the wrong reasons. He sniffed, frowning as the faint aroma of breakfast pancakes reached his nose. She'd actually gone out of the way to cook for him. He usually had to hunt for it. He pinched himself, just to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Who was this imposter, and what had she done with Salem? Once more wearing her childlike guise of form, Naruto was becoming increasingly fond of the Queen of Grim, all but glided across the clearing with a visible spring in her step. Glowing green tendrils of magic trailed from her fingertips as she scoured trees and unwanted roots for miles in every direction. Earth and stone unwound at her command. The very soil writhed and twisted to obey her every whim. It was both beautiful and terrifying in the same measure, and he had no idea why she was doing it. Right. He smacked his lips. Glad she's on my side. What Salem could not remake or mold with her magic, she used Grim to destroy outright. Huge packs of Beowulfs and Ursa hacked away at the larger trees with military precision, cut them into great chunks of lumber, and dragged them deeper into the forest, from which he heard the sound of hammers? Saws? If Naruto didn't know better, he'd think Salem was building something. Or preparing to, at the very least. Curiosity reared its head, but he shoved that jack back into its box. There were some things he just didn't want to know. To make matters even more baffling, Salem was leveling the forest and directing her troops with but a single hand. One hand, she was using the other to cook, for crying out loud. Was that a kiss the cook apron she was wearing? It was, wasn't it? What was this, the Twilight Zone or something? As he looked on and wondered whether he was dreaming or not, a steady stream of fire kissed the gremlin's right hand. With her mind alone, she held a skillet held above the blaze and commanded it to move with only a thought. Her brow creased and the contents within flipped, revealing another pancake. A flick of the wrist sent said pancakes sailing through the air to land neatly on a glass plate, because she'd made a table and chairs too. Of course she had. Naruto flicked a wary gaze over his shoulder, half expecting to find the rest of the forest on fire. It wasn't. His suspicion deepened. Salem either had very, very, very good news for him, or the apocalypse had started while he was sleeping. Somehow the latter seemed more likely. The day Salem started acting like a housewife was the day Sasuke dyed his blonde and started wearing orange. Naruto flicked a longing look at his sleeping bag. Maybe I should go back to sleep. Too late. Salem noticed him. There you are, lazybones. Her smile was infectious, and he noticed the angry timbre was gone from her voice. Good morning. She dropped everything she was doing, stepped into him and pressed her lips against his. Naruto sucked in a startled breath through his nose as her hands gripped his jacket and pulled him in closer, deepening the kiss. Her mouth was soft on his and all but turned him to stone where he stood. Yup, he decided. Definitely a good mood. Salem had only ever kissed him the once before this, and this time it lasted. Her tongue teased his lips with dark promise as she leaned against him. She pulled away before he could think to hold on to her, let alone reciprocate, leaving his mind in a pleasant if somewhat frustrated haze. I've prepared breakfast for you. Thankfully, her words were there to pluck him out of it, and she took him by the hand, tugging him towards the table. Come, you must be hungry. Woo? Naruto's brain rebooted and he shook his head. I mean breakfast? You're in a surprisingly good mood today, am I? She turned her head to blink back at him as they walked. I hadn't noticed. She hadn't? He dug his heels in, slowing her. Did something happen last night? Something might have. She gave him a secret smile as she guided him to the table, but said no more. Naruto pulsed his chakra, but no, it wasn't a genjutsu. Nothing changed. The young girl before him remained the same. This was real. Salem really had made him pancakes. They were still there when she pushed him into his seat. She'd even procured syrup and butter from God's knew where. Some of them were burnt, but the act warmed his heart all the same. He couldn't remember the last time some cooked for him. No. Wait. No one ever had. Don't you think that's a little unfair? Something stirred in him. Tears stung at his eyes and he hastily scrubbed them away before Salem could see. As promised, we're going to switch up our lesson plan today. His mentor informed him primly as devoured his meal. Last night you were nearly taken by an assassin. No, don't spit out your food. She beckoned back to him when his eyes widened and his cheeks bulged. Swallow. Keep eating. I would see you fed for what is to come. Hazel and I prevented it. You have nothing to fear. Wait. Naruto held up a hand. Who the heck is Hazel? Oh? Salem's smile held a hint of smugness to it as she gazed over his shoulder. He's right behind you. Hello? Naruto's head whipped around with an audible crack, only just noticing the absolute unit of a man looming behind him. Said giant slid into the seat beside him, leaving the young man reeling. Where in blazes did he come from? He hadn't been standing there a second ago. Someone that big shouldn't be able to move that quietly. When did he come from? Me, of course. Salem answered him as she tucked into her own meal. I summoned him using the body of said assassin as a catalyst. It wouldn't have been possible without it. They've proven quite compatible. Anyone important? No one to concern yourself with. She dabbed her mouth just a little too quickly for his liking. The matter has been dealt with. I don't expect them to try again, not after last night. Hazel seconded. That should have alarmed Naruto. A month ago it might have. He would have balked and shouted at Salem, said that she shouldn't kill, that killing was wrong, that killing in cold blood made you evil. But that was the thing about Salem. Morality had no meaning for her. She didn't see what she was doing as evil. What she wanted, consequences be damned. He wasn't beginning to think she wasn't quite right in the head. Never mind that. When had he become comfortable around so much death? Maybe it was because she threw swarms of Grim at him on a daily basis, and he had to kill those to survive. At least she wasn't going around sacrificing his friends. Mind you, he'd take issue if she tried to throw Shikamaru or Kiba into the meat grinder. Still, why him? Hazel was the most sensible choice given our lack of resources. What's is nearly useless in this environment given your lack of technology? She ticked the name off her fingers. Tyrion is mad as a hatter, and I don't think you're quite ready for Cinder. Naruto shivered. Something told him he wasn't prepared for whoever that was. So you can just call them? Just like that? My dear boy, all my servants are bound to me. In death and beyond. Naruto felt himself wince. Even me? No, she slashed a hand through the air, cutting him off before he could start to question himself. You are no servant of mine. You are my contractor. We have a pact. Honestly, he kept wondering why she empathized the word like that. It sounded important, very much so. If it makes you feel any better, I was only able to use Hazel's soul due to a freak occurrence. When the blonde tilted his head, she hastened to explain. His host rivaled his physical prowess, and bore a passing resemblance to him. Had I tried with anyone else, the ritual would have surely failed. As it was, the assassin's soul was consumed. It is not something I would do lightly. That's good? Yes, it is. She dabbed at her chin with a napkin and leaned back in her chair as she steepled her fingers. Naruto leaned back, suddenly aware of the smile she was wearing. Very wary. Now, today we will begin with the art of intimidation. Niji Hyuga will be a difficult opponent for you, even what you've learned. Her fingers drummed restlessly against the crude table. From what you've told me, he seems the type to close the distance, disable his enemy quickly, and disable them with a series of precise strikes. I would have taught you a weapon art, but sadly I know none to speak of, and I never felt the need to rely on one. Even if we were to try and find you one now, it's too late for you to have anything more than a passable skill in it. You've learned to dodge, and your aura will protect you now, but there's always the risk. Even if I use that, you can't control it yet. Her brow drew down. I'd rather you save it for the exams. My power is a potent thing, not much point in denying that when they both knew it. What about my semblance then? You said I have one? How do I use it? For once, Salem didn't have an answer for him. She looked not helpless, she was never helpless. But her silence struck him all the same. Hazel remained curiously silent at his side. I know nothing of semblances, Salem said at last. Supposedly they unlock under great stress or in an instance of great peril. Naruto perked up. Is that why you've been pushing me so hard these last few days? She looked away. No, yes. Hayes answered immediately. Salem glowered bloody red daggers at him. Traitor, you owe it to him to be honest. The giant finished his meal briskly and chased it down with a glass of orange juice. His life will be at risk soon. Bah! She scoffed. As if the Hyuga boy could kill him. I wasn't speaking of him. Anger bubbled up in Naruto's gut for all the wrong reasons. Not at Salem, but his opponent. Niji hadn't just defeated Hinata back in the prelims. He'd beaten her. Broken her. She'd been coughing blood by the end. She'd need months to recover from those injuries, if not more. She might never be a shinobi now. They were family, weren't they? You didn't do that to family. Would Niji try to kill him in the exam? It was a possibility. Then again, he might not care enough to try. This Hyuga girl you speak of, are you fond of her? Huh? Naruto blinked, honestly confused by her line of inquiry. Nah, I barely even know Hinata. She's alright, I guess. Didn't deserve to lose like that. His jaw tightened and he suddenly realized he'd smacked a fist into one palm without even realizing what he'd done. Niji crippled her. Her teacher said she might never be a shinobi again. I'll make him pay for that. Is that so? Salem seemed secretly pleased by those words. But if you fight by his rules, you will lose. Make no mistake, his hopes crumbled to dust. That was it? He'd trained this hard for nothing? Just like that, which is why you are going to cheat. Salem continued. Shamelessly. Naruto nearly fell out of his seat. Don't you, Me, mister. If you are to succeed in combat against the best of the shinobi, Salem buelled on, leaning over the table, you must have fear, surprise, and intimidation on your side. She waited for his head to bob in understanding before continuing. For if any one element is lacking, your victory will be called into question. You must break your foe before you engage them, Naruto. Only then will you ensure victory and have the accolades you seek. Comprehension broke like the dawn. So what you're saying is, I need to scare the shit out of him before our match? She clapped happily. Quite so. Naruto found himself matching her smile. There it was again. That strange feeling. It might have been hate. He hadn't experienced it for the longest time. He really hated that snaked bastard for knocking them around in the forest of death, and what he'd done to Sasuke, but this was a deeper kind of hate. More personal. Orochimaru was a foe he couldn't touch. Not yet. Niji was far closer to his level. In his heart of hearts he knew he could beat him. He just had to find a winning strategy. I want him to realize just how badly he screwed up. His fingers ground into fists, drawing angry red tracks against the skin there. If he won't see sense, I'll knock it into him. If he won't apologize, I'll make him. And you won't kill him? She asked. Not a chance. Death's easy. Living is hard. Ha! I like this one. Hazel slapped his back, nearly sending him flying. He understands. He does indeed. Salem hummed her approval, rising from her chair. Now then, your break is over. You will learn to evade everything Hazel and I throw at you in the next 3 days, or you will learn to die. A blazing blue flame ignited against her now open palm. You will learn to fight with every tool available to you, or you will learn to die. Huh. Had she just repeated herself? You will learn to control the powers I have bestowed upon you, or you will learn to die. Any questions? Just one. Naruto raised a hand. How does someone learn to die? Salem's smile terrified him. I'm so glad you asked. Like this. In hindsight, he really should have seen that coming. Oh well, that was bullshit. I wasn't ready. Too bad. Salem's smile grew. Dodge. Time passed. Naruto toiled hard under Salem's tutelage, working himself to the bone from sunup to sundown with the determination of a man possessed. There was scarcely time to eat and sleep before she flung him back into it once more. Time and time again he found himself pushed his limits, then past them. Openings? Close them or die. Weaknesses? Eradicate them or die. Enemies? Annihilate them or die. You have no choice. Funny thing that the human body tends to adapt pretty damn quick with the constant threat of death looming over it. Hazel was a brutal taskmaster in his own right. Not only did the man possess aura for days, but his semblance prevented was absolutely bullshit. The man couldn't feel pain. How did you stop someone like that? He soon learned the answer. Overwhelming force. Numb or not, the human body could only take so much. The mind, well, that was another matter. He took Salem's lessons to heart and more. Break the enemy before you engage them. All right. He could do that. And then, quite suddenly, the appointed day arrived. Victory was inevitable. Neji knew it, hated it, and cursed it in equal measure. One could not fight fate. No matter how one might wish it. You could delay it, forestall it perhaps, but in the end destiny always came calling. He was destined to win this match, just as he'd been from the very moment fate paired him against Naruto Uzumaki. There could be no doubt who was the better combatant. So why did he have a bad feeling about this? Pale eyes swept across the arena to his opponent, easily visible in the hazy afternoon sun. Blazing blue eyes regarded him coldly. He'd not spoken a word to anyone until their match was called. Hadn't even moved until they called him down here. There was something different about him. Something off. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. At least he'd shed that ghastly orange jumpsuit of his. Thank the log for small miracles. In place of those hideous blue and orange rags of yesterday, Naruto Uzumaki had chosen less outlandish attire. Gone were those absurdly bright colors, replaced by a long-sleeved navy shirt over which he'd thrown a pale gray vest and a pair of metal bracers for his forearms. The ensemble was accompanied by a pair of simple dark slacks with yet more light armor slapped over his vulnerable joints. He even had a shield of some strange bronze material strapped to his left arm. Did he think light armor and a shield would stop the gentle fist? Foolishness. It made no difference to Neji. A change of clothes didn't matter. Armor didn't matter. A hardened personality didn't matter. None of it mattered. A weakling was still a weakling and destiny was still destiny. This blonde buffoon had survived the prelims through a fluke and nothing more. There would be no miracle to save him this time, no lucky break, no timely rescue at the last moment. A month of training wouldn't train anything. It would only delay the inevitable. He would end this farce quickly and move on. Fate decreed it. The proctor took one look between them and spoke. I trust both of you are ready? Neji grunted. Ready. Naruto squared his shoulders. Same. Perhaps the man sensed the tension in the air. Perhaps it was some sixth sense of his. Perhaps he simply wasn't foolish enough to stand between two teenagers, one of whom was clearly out for blood. Who could say? Not Neji, certainly. Regardless, he backed away quick as he could, raised his arm and, begin. Neji flung himself backward. Naruto didn't attack. He didn't move at all. He simply stood there. The prodigy arched an eyebrow and shifted his left foot ever so slightly. Naruto didn't respond. He'd been prepared for a hail of kunai, a barrage of punches, or a storm of curses. Something. Anything. Not whatever this was. The last thing he'd been expecting was a standoff. Aren't you going to attack? He baited him. You'll never accomplish anything if you just stand there. Cold blue eyes narrowed to regard Neji for a long moment. I keep my promises, you know. In that moment, Hizashi's son felt icy fingers brush across his spine. He wasn't sure why, but gazing upon his opponent, he couldn't quite dismiss a pang of dread. Gone was the loudmouthed boy who'd promised to kick his ass back in the preliminaries. In his place stood Will. He wasn't sure what to call this strange calm. Unusual? Otherworldly? No. Absurd. But what was this he was muttering about? What promise? It was the wrong thing to say. For a fleeting instant those blue eyes flashed red as an aura of pure murder burst from the blonde. It smashed into Neji like a physical force, rooting him in place where he stood. In his mind's eye, something large loomed over Naruto's head, gone before he could get a good look at it. The whiskered warrior wrestled his killing intent down a moment later and hung his head, blonde bangs shading his eyes from view. You don't even remember, do you? He all but whispered the words. I don't know why I'm surprised. Naruto raised his gaze and for a moment, just a moment, Neji Hyuga thought he glimpsed a pule of flame shooting through those azure orbs. You know, the fool began slowly. I promised her I wouldn't go into this fight angry, but I think I'm gonna have to break that promise. Congratulations. You've pissed me off. Salem leaned back in the stands and smiled. Well, that didn't take long. Beside her, Hazel leaned forward, the seat creaking ominously under his weight. You knew this would happen, but of course, dear Hazel. She patted the giant's forearm. Naruto is many things, but cruel isn't one of them. He's a kind soul. Hazel frowned. You're certain he won't kill him, then? Naturally. Her lips quirked into a smile. His punishment must be more severe. The Queen of the Grim took a long moment to revel in her minion's confusion as the air turned humid and continued to thicken. She'd come to the arena wearing the guise of a young human girl, and as such, no one thought to question their presence. She'd received a few odd looks for her garb, but so long as she kept her powers and appearance hidden, no one batted an eyelash at her. Nor Hazel, at that. The third Hokage had not made a second attempt to retrieve her contractor, and clearly couldn't see through her magics. If he was aware of her machinations, then he was biding his time. Unless Ozma had been called back by the gods and possessed him. Nothing was impossible. Salem's lips pursed at the thought. She really needed to find a way to ascertain whether her ex was still kicking around or not. Across the arena, her gaze met that of a lone Umbu. Yugao stiffened beneath her gaze and averted her masked face, but made no move to flee. Salem contemplated the idea of stalking over there, and grabbing the cheeky little thing by her ear, then discarded it. As amusing as it might be to embarrass Yuzuki in front of everyone, it would blow her cover wide open. And her tower hadn't been constructed yet. Once it was, she'd have no more need for any such secrecy. She's been hiding from us. Hazel rumbled in her ear. We'll need to deal with her, I've noticed. Such a loyal servant, Hazel. Worry not. She's held her tongue. Our pact stands. A dark brow rose to regard her with mild concern. How can you be certain? She could have run to her masters by now. If she'd breathed so much as a word of that night, she would be dead. Yugao still hadn't avenged her beloved yet. She was waiting for something, that much had proven obvious. But what? Was she gathering evidence? Preparing to prolong Baki's suffering? It didn't matter. Her patience with the girl had begun to run thin. She had upheld her end of the bargain, while the Umbu had not. She'd only gotten away with this long thanks to her attention being focused elsewhere. If the little chit still refused to exact vengeance by the end of the exams, then she would be brought to heel. By force if need be. A peal of thunder ripped through the air and Salem's grin grew. Here it comes. Naturally, the deck had been stacked against her contractor from the very beginning. Salem had known that. She'd always known. No amount of regular training could hope to close the gap between Naruto and Neji. One was a prodigy in the world of physical combat. The other was not. A month simply wasn't enough time to do anything more than build the most basic of foundations for a normal person. He never had a chance of winning anything resembling a fair fight. So she cheated. Shamelessly. Why not? Morality was a crutch she had no need of. After all, anything Ozma could do? She could do better. And so it begins. And so it began. High overhead, a lone cloud swept in to blot out the sun. Then another. Another. Another still. Neji risked a glance for them, frowning in quiet confusion as the once clear sky became overcast, that once sunny afternoon quickly becoming dark and cloud. A lone peal of thunder ripped through the heavens, threatening rain. A nervous murmur ran through the stands. Was this a jutsu of some sort? Surely not. The boy hadn't displayed such prowess the last time he'd met. This was either a freak occurrence, or someone else's doing. Wasn't it? Naruto raised a hand, and the very clouds began to swirl ominously overhead, every fiber of Niji's being tensed. Bugger. This was going to hurt. For a moment, the world held its breath. No. Naruto exhaled, and the humidity vanished. His eyes dimmed as his arm fell. Though the overcast sky remained, those didn't look quite so dark as they'd been before, nowhere near as threatening. Niji didn't trust it for a moment. The fool had clearly been about to unleash something, only to restrain himself at the last moment. No? Niji parroted in confusion. You're not worth using that. Arctic chips of ice narrowed on him, skewering him 1,000 times. If I used that power, it would be over too quick. So, before we really get started, now he began to roll up his sleeves, exposing strange ink scrawled across the length of his right arm flowing down to his wrist. Do you want to forfeit? What? Niji flung out his hand and took a stance. No. Never. As if I'd surrender to someone like you. Great. His opponent grinned. Mind if I call in some reinforcements then? Niji scoffed. Your shadow clones? They can't possibly help you. Blue eyes narrowed. Oh, I ain't talking about them. I don't understand. Niji tensed. Don't worry. You will. Naruto reared back and raised an arm. Pearly white teeth flashed in the sun. Then he bit his thumb, pearly white teeth sinking deep into the flesh of his right hand. Dark arterial blood burst from that palm to spatter the floor, bubbling and hissing where it struck the ground. Niji eyed it warily, still uncertain of what he intended or why the blood was sizzling so. Why maim himself? It didn't make any sense. His gaze strayed back to the ground, still stained scarlet, as his opponent ran a blood hand across his inked arm. As if summoned by that very gesture, monsters burst from the bloody floor as the puddle grew and expanded. Niji was thankful the crowd gasped first, because it hid the horrified sound he made when he saw them. Creatures of black fur and white bone crawled forth from the puddle of blood, First a wolf, then a bear, followed by a sizable raven. As he looked on, the avian fluttered up to land on the blonde's shoulder. Not a one of those grisly hellbeasts moved to attack Naruto. Instead they congregated around him. Protected him. Neji felt his mind revolt at the sight of them. Through his Byakugan, their bodies burning with dark light, as though lit from within by some greater power. Just looking at them left him feeling ill. These were animals and yet not animals. Demons. Abominations. Unholy. Unclean. They only wore the shape of beasts, when in truth they were so much more. It took nearly everything Neji had to muster his willpower and not flinch. Ah, that's better. Naruto hummed, stroking the raven's chin. Always better out than in, Salem says. Right, Raven? The Nevermore called right back. He'd named that ghastly thing? So you've learned a summoning jutsu. White eyes narrowed upon the beasts. Am I supposed to be impressed? What are these supposed to be? Your pets? The Beowulf at the boy's elbow snapped at him, and Neji withdrew quickly. He could feel the beasts watching him as he did. That bear looked like it wanted to rend him limb from limb, and the eyes of that bird, they seemed far too human for his liking. Hiding behind them, are we? He scoffed. From what little he'd seen of him back in the preliminaries, Neji suspected those words would get right under the young man's skin. They should have rattled him, set him into a shouting fit. An unhinged opponent off balance was an opponent easily bested. He knew this from experience. If he could draw Naruto away from whatever the hell those things were, it would be an easy victory. SNRK. Neji was not prepared for the snicker that followed. Bahahaha. A peal of laughter burst from the fool as he doubled over, clutching at his sides. The raven cawed indignantly as it clung to his shoulder, but he continued to laugh anyway. His mirth was a sharp, throaty sound, almost as if someone or something were laughing with him. Neji shook it off and didn't take his eyes off him. Not for a moment. Was this another trick or some sort? Had he simply gone mad with fear? Finally, it became too much and the Hyuga felt the tips of his ears begin to burn a bright pink. What's so funny? When he finally straightened, Naruto's grin was just the wrong shade of vicious, as though he'd been expecting that very question. Oh, nothing. He sighed and wiped a final bemused tear from the corner of his eye. It's just, I'm starting to think she was right about you. You really think you're in the right here? Slim shoulders rose and fell in a pitying shrug. That stick shoved so far up your ass that you've been spitting splinters most of your life. A fist rose towards him, fingers twitching into a parody of a claw. I'm gonna have to rip it out. Not gonna lie, Neji, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a lot. Are you quite done prattling like a fool? Neji's hadn't thought he would enjoy this battle. He'd reconsidered. He was going to enjoy shutting that fool's mouth. Very much. Nah, just savoring the moment. Naruto raised a hand before his face, fingers clenched before his whiskered visage. Tell me if you're impressed or not after you see this. His hand swept down, and the world burned black anew. This time, the veil didn't fall so easily and the Byakugan's all-encompassing vision went blind. Neji Hyuga plunged into darkness without end, and judging by the screams of the crowd, they had too. That girl Hinata. A low voice came from the sudden shadow he found himself enveloped in. She had hopes, She had dreams. You didn't just take them from her, you crushed her. He turned, searching for it, but the words came from all around him. She was your cousin, yet you left her spitting blood on the ground, even tried to kill her at the end. Naruto waited, perhaps expecting an apology. When none came, his voice hardened. I spent a long time thinking about that, about how I wanted to deal with you. I don't want to kill you, Neji. But you're going to wish I did. Coward! The Hyuga shouted into the void. Show yourself. The veil dropped and Neji Hyuga saw. Naruto stood just where he'd left him, and yet he was changed. A mask of pure white bone concealed the boy's now pallid whiskered visage, edged with strange blue lines rippling in a spiral towards the center. Eyes of furious crimson leered at him behind that hideous facade, framed by dark scara. What kind of mask was that? It resembled some sort of demonic beast. No, not a beast, he realized, the fox. Another chill ran through him, this one far worse than the last. It was his eyes. Those damn eyes. They didn't even see him, looked right through him as if he were no one. As if he were nothing. The lone Nevermore on Naruto's back cawed out in triumph and took wing. Its compatriots stepped back, edging away. It should have made Neji bolder about his chances. Somehow, it only made him feel worse, because those three beasts weren't simply stepping back to make way for their master. They were bowing. There was something wrong with his skin. It had lost all semblance of its color. What was once tan had now gone a sickly, pallid gray. No. Not gray. White, pure as the driven snow. He could see crimson veins creeping up the fool's arms, pulsing with all manner of heretical life. Even his hair had changed, gone from healthy blonde to ghastly silver. It made him look even less human than before. Not a man, not a monster, but some terrible, horrible union between the two. Not even a slavering beast. He could have accepted that much. Instead, the boy he'd once called a fool just looked at him. At him, through him, past him, down to the very depths of his soul. Neji could feel his heart grinding into pieces the longer he looked at him, mind cracking with each passing second. He stepped back. A single pace, nothing more, yet it was a retreat all the same. His foe could have taken that opportunity to strike, to pounce, to do something, anything. But he said nothing, nothing at all. You abomination. The prodigy swallowed his anxiety and straightened his back, edging into a wary stance. What in the world have you done to yourself? Sorry. Those ghastly masked jaws parted as he spoke, revealing the very human face and grin within. I don't have time to explain. Dread seized Niji's throat in a vice and compelled him to strike. He must. Now. Before it was too late, howling in desperate fury, he flung himself at Naruto in a cyan blur to ram an open palm against the blonde's exposed chest. It was a reckless move made with all his might, meant to stab into the very heart of his chakra network and disable him quickly. Whatever that thing was, he wanted no part of it whatsoever. He had to end it quickly. One strike. One victory, before that thing could get its hands on him. His attack found only empty air, and he stumbled forward, nearly tripping over himself as he bled momentum. Byakugan eyes bulged, searching for their prey and finding naught but empty air. What? Something tapped him on the shoulder, and he struck backwards wildly. No, a low rasp answered. None of that. A clawed hand clamped down on Niji's wrist and ground the bones together painfully, turning his fingers weak. Agony turned his world red. The Hyuga grit his teeth against it, and palmed a kunai to his free palm. A single quick cut lashed out at the hand holding him, hoping to force the fool to let go of his wrist. Naruto jerked him forward instead, and quite suddenly, that masked visage filled his vision. Niji balked and tried to spin. Rhoda, not quick enough. Crimson flooded his world, clenched knuckles barreled into his nose at breakneck speed. The poor Hyuga never saw them coming. He did not fall. Nor did he simply stumble. Oh no. He flew. One moment he was scowling in confusion at the masked blonde before him. By the next, his back became intimate with the opposite wall in a way no self-respecting shinobi desired. He blinked rapidly, trying and failing to clear the stars from his vision. That single punch had blasted him clear across the arena. He'd nearly cracked his skull wide open. That one was for Hinata. Naruto lowered his fist, hideous eyes narrow and intent behind the mask. The rest is for me. Niji wrestled himself free from the wall and crashed to the ground on a bent knee, gasping for air that refused to come. Even then his head wouldn't stop spinning. What little he'd eaten this morning threatened to come boiling back up his throat in a raw storm of bile. He touched a hand to his nose as he rose. Bandaged fingers came away red. Impossible. For a moment, he hadn't even seen him move. He'd slipped into his blind spot with ease, moved again, and sent him flying. Where had he found this strength? All around him, the stadium had gone silent. In place of the crowd's cheers, Niji's heart hammered harshly in his ears, thudding like the drums of a great hunt out for his blood. He coughed once and tried to push himself upright, but his arms failed him. He could all but feel 100 eyes boring into him, judging him, damning him, and then he heard it. Gee, get him. It was a faint voice, one he recognized all too well. Something ugly bubbled up in Niji's chest, and he shoved it back down. It didn't end there. Another cry went up. Yeah. Kick his ass, Naruto, tch. Blasted Inuzuka. How dare he? Ha! Way to wipe that smirk off his face. Was there no end to this farce? Only a few moments ago, they'd all been terrified of the monsters he'd summoned. Now with one punch and a few words, he'd suddenly won them to their side. Just the thought of it made him see red. Did they think him fated to win? Preposterous. A single lucky hit did not a victory make. If you're not gonna come to me, I'll come to you. Naruto's voice rang out among the roars. Get up and fight unless you think it's your destiny to lose? Niji snarled and slammed himself upright. You dare? Yup. The blonde tilted his head. I've dared a lot of things lately. Now. Stand. Up. Footsteps approached steadily, a steady staccato beat slamming against the ground. Not slow or languid by any mean of measure, but quick. Rapid. Naruto wasn't going to give him the time to find his bearings, much less recover from a hit like that. A scowl warped his face. His foe met it with one of his own as he surged forward. The beasts followed their master, matching him step for step. Would they reach him first? Or would he? Only a few minutes into the fight and already he found himself losing control. Was this fear? No. Never. He felt no such fear. I've been waiting a long time for this, Niji. Don't go passing out on me now. The Hyuga swept himself into an ready stance and made ready to face him. Naruto's mask cracked open yet again, revealing a ghastly grin. I blundered, haven't I? The thought hit Niji too late. And then there was pain. A child who was not embraced by their village will burn it down to feel its warmth. You shunned that boy. You made him an outcast. You forsook him. And where did that bring him, I wonder? Oh yes. You know the answer, don't you? To me, Salem, break the cage. There was just something therapeutic about an old-fashioned beatdown, Naruto found. If said beatdown consisted of smacking a smug prick in the mouth? Icing on the cake. When said prick had been running said mouth? Spouting lies like fate and destiny? Well, it spoke to a deep, primal place in the young man's soul. Fate could go plow itself. Destiny be damned. Every blow battered down that arrogance. Each strike sheared away the Hyuga's burning pride until naught but dying cinders remained. By Niji's own words, he was destined to be weak. Powerless. Forgotten. Alone. A dead last street rat who knew nothing of friends or family. Not the embrace of a mother, nor the guidance of a father. Naruto took that real personal. Niji believed fate to be eternal, inevitable, unstoppable. His beliefs had fashioned themselves into a cage, his so-called destiny preventing him from reaching out into the wide world beyond. Naruto was determined to break that cage and maybe a few bones. Probably best to be sure. He knew Niji wouldn't accept anything less than total defeat. Any trick on his part might be seen as a fluke, and wouldn't be accepted as a victory in the broken Hyugas. He needed overwhelm him. Dominate him. Annihilate him, without killing him. A triumph so obvious, a defeat so glaring, that it couldn't possibly be denied. Here, in this moment, Naruto couldn't care less about being a chunin. He was here to make a point. Little did he know he'd already been chosen by those watching him. Even had he known, he wouldn't have cared. Niji barreled in again, hands blurring. Naruto swung his arm back and caught a pointed strike to his shoulder for the trouble. He allowed it, barely even grunting as he caught the older boy by the face with one hand and slammed him to the ground. Another crater was born from the impact. He pushed his adversary down into it, fingers tight around his throat. A frantic flurry of juken strikes stabbed at the armored plates now sheathing his wrists, to no avail. It felt like the buzzing of an annoying gnat, noticeable, but harmless all the same. Naruto rolled his eyes and pressed down harder. Niji kicked out at him, shoes slapping at his chest. This isn't enough. The former blonde modulated his voice to an angry rasp, knowing the effect it would have on his foe. You're never going to win like this. Damn you, damned? Me? Naruto tilted his head, pretending to consider the words. Not at all. I feel blessed. Niji howled and thrashed beneath him. There it was. A crack in his composure. The tiniest of fractures visible in his resolve. Naruto knew he could have ended it there. Of course he could. It was well within his power to do so. It would have been a simple matter to apply just a little more pressure and choke the Hyuga out, thereby ending their match once and for all, or perhaps a few good punches to the face. Niji didn't have aura. He wouldn't be able to stand up to that kind of punishment. It would be quick, painful and humiliating perhaps, but Niji would recover in time. None would be able to deny his victory, no one save Niji. He saw the defiance still burning in those pale orbs. Even now on the precipice of defeat, his jaw was still set in a firm line. His resolve was fractured, but not broken. Nothing would change if he beat him like this. They'd still hate one another. Niji wouldn't accept a victory like this. With a long suffering sigh, Naruto reared back and deliberately released his prey. Rather than finish what he'd started, he chose to let his adversary slip away yet again, prolonging the match. Niji seized the opportunity, of course, but in doing so, he was forced to acknowledge the fact that he'd been released in the first place, and so the fracture became a break, a fissure etching itself into his glassy expression as he scrambled away. It wasn't enough to save him. Not quite. But it would be. Niji beliefs weren't broken yet. You must break your enemy before you engage them. An old memory, Salem's voice, pushed its way to the forefront of his mind. Only then will you have your victory. Only a month under her wing it hadn't necessarily shattered his worldview, but changed it. Shaped it. Altered it. Rather than rush in blindly, he'd taken the time to study his opponent. It wasn't hard. Niji's strengths lay in close combat, in his all-seeing eyes and the prowess they afforded him. Of course they did. The gentle fist was made to close down chakra points. Without chakra, a shinobi was powerless. In a world where chakra meant power, the one who took it away was king. Such a shame he wasn't using chakra right now. Still, the pain was annoying. Salem's power, her magic, coursed through his veins, eager to rip and tear. Naruto leashed and controlled it, giving it focus and direction both, then pushed it through his chakra coils. A faint blue light briefly shimmered around his shoulders as they sprang open once more. Blue burned back into a dark tainted red, drawing alarmed cries from the audience. He didn't care. Niji sucked in a sharp breath. That's not possible. You shouldn't be able to do that. Shouldn't be knocking you around either. But I'm doing that too. The Hyuga's jaw closed with a soft click. A fluke. Nothing more. Naruto chuckled. Keep telling yourself that. Salem had given him two separate sources of power. First came her blood, and with it, all the powers of the Grim. Not quite magic on its own, but useful nonetheless. It granted him the sacred right to summon her brood and transform into the shape he was wielding even now. Thanks to her tutelage, he could hold this mask for nearly 30 minutes now. That might not seem like much to some, but in a fight, half an hour was an eternity. Her other power was far more potent, that of the soul. She'd unlocked his aura already, but the gift she'd given him transcended even that. This was potent and held no such time limit. Mana surged through his veins like a live wire, sending his pulse pounding in his ears like the drums of a great hunt out for blood. She'd called it the power of the maidens. Rather, someone named Ozma gave it such a title. Hers was different, and all the more powerful for it. There was no such restriction on her gift. Salem could impart her power to whomever she wished, and take it back just as easily. And she'd only given him a fourth of her strength. Yeah, he pitted her opponents, but this power had a drawback all its own. He couldn't control it well. Whenever he used it, the magic would rush out of him like a flood. He couldn't control it anywhere near as much as he would have liked. He unleashed that thunderbolt earlier, Niji wouldn't be standing here. There could be no doubt of that. Naruto didn't want him dead. You couldn't repent from the afterlife. His punishment must be more severe. The prodigy closed with him again, fists flashing in an intricate combination meant to distract as much as stun. 8 trigrams? He cried. This time the Jinchuriki retaliated. After all, this presented a rare opportunity. If he couldn't control Salem's power properly, then he just needed to learn, didn't he? Nothing quite like a trial by fire to bring out the best in someone. Or so Salem said. Meh, semantics. Regardless, this was a good chance to test himself under fire. With but a thought, he ordered the Grim back, preventing their interference. Niji was nearly halfway to him. NWO 64. Naruto grinned, and almost immediately his mask mirrored the motion. Gotcha. Jaws of jagged porcelain popped open with an ominous click. Fang teeth gaped wide to reveal the danger lurking just beyond their bite. A smoldering swell of red light revealed itself with a sonorous hum, building at the back of Naruto's throat. With each passing moment it burned brighter, brightest still. Power was marshaled and mastered, ruthlessly held in check even as it whined and thrashed under his grip. All right, he hummed himself. Let's see you deal with this. Sure enough, Niji saw it, and dug in his heels to lengthen his stride, for all the good it did him. He knew he wouldn't make it in time. Naruto knew it too. It was too late for that. Far too late. In his anger he'd made the rookie mistake of charging into melee, thinking his foe wouldn't have a ranged attack. Now Naruto punished him for it. Viciously. The Jinchuriki roared and a seething swathe of scarlet light burst from his mouth to strike the Hyuga head on. There was no escape. One could imagine his surprise then, when Niji dug his heels in, pushed his chakra to the fore, and spun. Rotation. At the very last moment, an expansive dome of blue and white sprang up between him and the blast, splitting the coruscating red beam like a great sea to either side. Rather than experience anger at being forestalled, Naruto nearly laughed aloud. He would have too, if he wasn't occupied with his attack. For a moment, he almost wanted to thank Niji for this gracious gift. He couldn't have designed a better challenge himself. Now he was even more determined to break that strange shield of his. Rearing back, the blonde's red eyes flashed, and he howled, pouring a fresh surge of power into his attack. Scarlet light became blinding, pushing against the snarling vortex with renewed intensity. Niji's technique held for all of a moment more, then that proud dome of blue light shattered like so much glass. Bereft of his protections and caught on the back foot, Niji had nothing left to him. The older boy barely had time to cross his arms before the blast ripped him from his feet, bore him down into the ground and all but drilled him into the nearest solid surface. There was an explosion when he hit the southern wall, an almighty rush of heat and fury and light that rushed through the stadium to turn the world red. And for the first time since their battle began, someone screamed, "Oh!" Salem cooed in the back of his head. That sounded painful. Despite himself, Naruto winced. Any enjoyment he might have felt at Niji's pain faded when he saw the state of his right arm. Somehow, he'd managed to twist his body aside at the last instant, reducing his profile and minimizing the damage. It didn't change the fact that his dominant limb was currently a charred mess. His headband had been blown back too, exposing a strange mark on his forehead. Yet despite that, or perhaps solely out of spite, the battered Hyuga pulled himself upright. "What's that on your forehead?" he asked. "It's none of your concern," Niji growled. "What was that?" "Don't really have a name for it, yet." The Jinchuriki shrugged. "I'm thinking about Doom Blast." "How's that sound?" Niji wrinkled his nose as he scraped himself off the floor. "Tacky, I know." A wry grin spread beneath his bony facade. "But it's the right kind of tack, don't you think?" Niji coughed smoke. "Utter bastard." "No," Naruto riposted instantly. "That would be you. Now, are you gonna surrender gracefully? Or are you ready for round 2? Niji snarled and flung a brace of shuriken at him. Nearly a dozen shadowy hands erupted from the earth to intercept them. Naruto peered out between the full limbs, mask parting to reveal a grim grin. Round 2 it is, then. Baki considered himself a loyal shinobi. He was loyal to his Kazekage, loyal to his village, and loyal to his people. Nothing else mattered to him. He cared not a fig for the other villages and their people. Why should he? They were not the sand. What could they possibly hope to offer them? Mist? A land constantly at war with itself. Stone? A realm trapped in traditionalist dogma, unable to rise above the mistakes of the last war. Cloud? Too distant and ruled by emotion. Many of the lesser villages were beneath his notice altogether. Ah, but the hidden leaf, they were worthy of his ire. Her people lived a life of luxury, replete with comforts those of the sand were forced to do without. They knew nothing of suffering, not of sacrifice or hardship, but they would soon. They, who had taken the wealth of missions from them, they who stole away their clients and left their village to found away in the dark. They had sown the wind and would reap the whirlwind. This invasion was necessary to save his country. With the leaf gone, wealth would flow back into the sand. They would prosper once more. So did he watch. So did he wait. So did he observe the battle raging below, preparing himself for the chosen time. That boy down there, the one with the mask, they'd been wrong about him. Initial reconnaissance had deemed the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi little more than a loud-mouthed boy, a braying fool who didn't know when to shut up. Loud perhaps, but otherwise weak. He hadn't done much to prove otherwise in the preliminaries. Back then hadn't seen any reason to amend their intel. Why would he? The snot-nosed brat had won on a fluke, nothing more. He was a threat to no one, save himself. How a month had changed him. Now looked older. Taller. Stronger. Now he was tossing that Hyuga around like a straw doll. He'd clearly mastered some semblance of his beast. It must be. What else could it be? He ground his hands into a fist at the sight. A shudder passed through him, not one of anticipation this time, but fear. By all accounts, Shikaka was the weakest of the tailed beasts. The Kyuubi was far stronger. If this whelp could control it, no. He mustn't think such treacherous thoughts. This one would need to be watched closely. Perhaps a bit of poison slipped into his food, a sneak attack when he wasn't prepared. Something, anything, to cripple him when the time came. What if Gaara had to fight him? Would he win? It doesn't matter. Baki murmured to himself. He's weak, like the rest. He will be crushed. Weak, are we? A woman's voice hissed in his ear suddenly, sibilant in its softness. Care to test that? A thin steel cord looped around the shinobi's neck and hauled him into the shadows before he could cry out. The attack was so sharp, so sudden, that he had no time to prepare himself, much less defend against it. Even as his hands flew to his throat, the garrote wire bit into his neck and strangled any hope of escape, much less a substitution jutsu. No one saw him, none recognized his plight. 10 fingers scrabbled at the wire as his world began to blur. Violet hair ticked his cheek and still his captor dragged him away from prying eyes. Hurts, doesn't it? That same voice snarled at him, the blackest of hisses. This is what he felt when you killed him. His life bleeding away with no one to save him. Baki slapped a hand at her wrist. No, not like this, you're right. Remarkably, his tormentor hummed their agreement. This is too quick. You have to suffer first. Without warning, the wire slipped away. A boot slammed into his back and kicked him forward, slamming him down to his hands and knees. He didn't have time to rise. A kick crashed into his side and slammed him down a flight of stairs, fracturing one rib and shattering 3 more. Shards of flying bone played havoc with his insides. Gasping, he flung himself aside, tensing for a killing blow that was sure to come. It never came. Instead, he scrambled to his feet and found himself face to face with an umbu wearing a cat mask, their face hidden from the world. Only their strange, violet hair lent any credence to their identity. Her shoulders were stiff with tension, her hands quivering in unmistakable rage. Idly, he noted the blade at her back. She looked like she knew how to use it. Who are, at last? Vengeance. The woman interrupted suddenly, turning her head to regard him with a stiff, jerky motion. All that planning, all that preparation, I have sold my very soul for this moment. Questions whirled in Baki's mind as he stumbled away, so many grains of sand blown away in the windstorm. Who in blazes was this woman? Why was she attacking him? Had his identity been compromised? Was the invasion doomed already? Surely not. Unless it was. Unless the leaf had led them to this very moment, had their enemies lain in wait and permitted them to gather their forces, just to crush them? It was a hopeless thought, one he didn't want to believe it, one that overwhelmed him regardless. Identify yourself. He cried in vain, hoping to buy himself time. Incredibly, the umbu complied. Gladly, murderer. She threw her mask away, exposing angry eyes and oh gods. Her face. What was wrong with her face? It wasn't normal. Didn't look healthy at all. At a glance, the left side of her visage appeared perfectly normal. It was the right that worried him. It was all wrong and pallid, bone white with red veins pulsing through her cheeks on that side. They pulsed in time with her heartbeat. A single red iris regarded him, and for all his bravery, Baki found himself shrinking back. By the sage. What was this? An infection? A plague? She looked well on her way to becoming a monster. Perhaps she already was one. My name is Yuzuki. The madwoman declared, warped face twisting in a snarl. You killed my lover. You took everything from me. Prepare to die. Baki bristled. Yugao? I don't even know who you are. Her smile was just the wrong shade of vicious. You will. Baki cleared his throat, only to pause as he experienced a sudden pang of dread. Fingers like ice ran down his spine, chilling him to the bone. A question sprang to his mind. Something told him he wouldn't very much like the answer. Somewhere above them in the stands, the crowd roared their approval for one of the combatants. Who? He croaked out. No. What was his name? Yugao gave him one word. Hate. The blood drained from Baki's face. Well, there went any chance of diplomacy. By the sands, this was going to come down to a fight. one he wasn't sure he could win. He'd have to kill her quickly, quietly, too. It wasn't yet time to strike. But could he succeed? This woman was well aware of him, and likely knew his tricks. He was confident enough in his ability. He'd have to be quick. One strike, one kill, one death before she could ever hope to realize what transpired. He'd hide her corpse and pin the blame on someone else. He'd slay her the same way he had that hate fool. Raising his hands, he began to weave a quick array seals. Splat. Why wasn't his right hand moving? Baki looked down. Blinked, as he beheld his right arm laying on the floor, severed well below the elbow. Shock dawned as he watched the blood flow from it. His gaze rose and fell upon the severed stump of his arm. At first he didn't quite comprehend it. Then came the fear. This was a joke, right? It had to be, perhaps a genjutsu of some sort. He hadn't even felt the cut, much less the blade biting into his flesh. No one could possibly be that fast. She hadn't even drawn her sword. Doesn't feel very nice, does it? The Umbu crooned. Here. Let me even you out. Yugao's blade flicked out again in another impossibly fast sweep, little more than a gleaming arc of silver light. Baki barely felt the cut before his left hand joined the right upon the floor. Disarmed quite literally, he tried at last to retreat, only to gurgle in surprise as another flash of silver bisected his legs. This time, he couldn't ignore the pain. He crashed down to the ground with a scream. It was quickly drowned out by the stands above. Outside, the crowd howled for bloody spectacle, blissfully unaware of the grisly game taking place beneath their very feet. I'm going to die here. A small part of his brain balked numbly as Yugao advanced upon him. Aren't I? Her sword slashed down at his limbless body. Once. Twice. Thrice. Baki did not die well. Salem watched Naruto's brawl from the stands and sniffled happily. I raised that boy, you know. She wiped a tear from her eye. Even taught him that move. I'm so proud. Hazel offered a rueful chuckle of his own as he leaned forward in his seat. He's doing quite well, isn't he? To think he's holding back. He wasn't he? Such a sight pleased the Queen of the Grim to no end. She even clapped as fresh explosions sent Niji scurrying for cover. How unlike her contractor to play with his food. Really, it served as a stoic reminder of how far she'd come in such a short time. Centuries ago she would have sought to slaughter everyone in this village without so much as a second thought. No remorse would have been felt, no tears shed for the fallen. She would have gone about her work like a machine, feeling nothing for anything of her victims. Now, yes. She pumped a fist into the air with a triumphant cry. Go for the groin. To his credit, being of the male persuasion, Hazel didn't endorse such violence. My queen, please. Salem ignored his protests and continued to watch the slaughter with open relish. So what if the common folk balked at her? Thanks to her disguise, they thought her a particularly bloodthirsty child come to watch the Chunin exams with her father. No one was any the wiser. A good thing too. She would have eviscerated anyone who spoiled her fun right now. Really, she found this arena amusing, if only because she'd never seen one before. Why had she not thought of such a thing? To her, this idea was fresh. New. Something she'd never thought to attempt before. And why not? Warriors fighting for her amusement, the chance to gain favor and advance in rank under her watchful eye as they tested their mettle and revealed fighting styles yet unseen. The very idea tickled her. She'd never thought to try her hand at such a thing. Even in the past, there had never been a shortage of those willing to fight for the sake of glory. For all its faults and flaws, humanity could be terribly entertaining at times. When pitted against one another, they were all too eager to turn on one another. Atlas had been one such example. Nothing wrong with a little spectacle now and again. Why, she hadn't needed to do much of anything there. She'd shown up with a giant grim whale, surrounded the city, and let them destroy one another. Such silly creatures, those mortals. Bit of a shame what happened to the robot girl, though. Salem hadn't held any real ill will toward Penny. After all, the girl had been so kind as to give her the staff. A sharp crack caught her attention, and she turned in time to find a rather amusing sight. One of Naruto's summoned Ursa had caught Niji by the heel with a giant paw. Said bear proceeded to whip the poor prodigy back and forth, smashing him into the ground like a rag doll. Heh. Puny Hyuga. Her gaze drifted across the stands, listening as bets were placed and wagers made. A seed of curiosity sprouted in her mind as she observed them. Was this what Ozma had called gambling? Another aspect of life she had not bothered to indulge in ages ago. Wait. Were these fools betting on her contractor? Aha. They were. An idea struck her and on a whim, she seized it. She turned to face a portly noble in the seat opposite her. A fine fool of a fop clad in heavy robes, and was that makeup? Ugh. It made him look like a clown, all white and pasty-faced. And these fools ruled this land? Her lips curled in a scowl at the thought. The right to rule belonged to the strong, not these fools. 1,000 on the Uzumaki boy, she declared. The braggart rounded on her, eyes gleaming with avarice. I'll take that bet, little miss. Within moments others took up the hue and cry, even as a few staunch idiots stubbornly clung to the idea that their cherished Hyuga would win the day. Salem let them live in their ignorance. They may be smug now, but that would make their moment of defeat all the sweeter. She'd enjoy fleecing them while her contractor beat the bastard bloody. She saw something else then. Rather someone. A girl with pale eyes. Just like that, her interest shifted anew. Could it be? There was certainly some resemblance to Niji there. Almost frightfully so. Curiosity reared its head in her heart, and the beginnings of a frown plucked at the corner of her mouth. She wanted to know, she needed to know. Was this the girl her contractor had spoken of? What was she like, to have caught his eye? Brave? Fierce? Strong? Something less? Something more? The thought wouldn't let her be. Perhaps it was the body she was using, perhaps changing her form like this made her more emotional. Who could say? Regardless, she simply must know. Well, Hazel saw her smirk and frowned in mild displeasure. My queen, please don't. Too late. Salem patted one of his arms. Be a dear and look after my body for a moment, would you? She never gave him the chance to answer, for in the very next moment she went limp in the giant's arms and arrowed herself at the girl's mind. Naruto was winning. Hinata couldn't believe her eyes. She kept blinking them, certain she'd wake at any moment. A small part of her almost expected she would. Any moment now she'd wake up in a hospital bed, only to find that this was all some delirious fever dream. The thought was almost too painful to imagine. It threatened to break her, shatter her heart beyond repair. But no. This was real. No matter how much she scrubbed her eyes, the scene before her did not change. Against all odds, against all hope, against everything cousin Niji had said and done, Naruto was pounding her cousin in the ground. All thanks to that strange, terrifying new power of his. That dark energy coiling about him. It spoke to a small, primal part of her, a voice she'd sought to suppress all her life. Her cousin lunged at him anew and the two of them exchanged a blistering series of blows, moving faster than the untrained eye could see. Quite suddenly the masked warrior came out on top. He shunted aside a palm thrust that would have surely perforated his heart, and chambered a vicious kick into Niji's chin in the chin. Caught unawares, the branch member was launched away, sent skipping across the arena like a flung stone. A sudden gust of wind followed, buffeting his body and all but slamming him into a wall. One of those strange summon beasts loped after him with a low chuffing sound, only for its master to raise a hand. Incredibly, the creature obeyed and sat on its haunches, leaving him to continue what he'd started. Hinata didn't want Niji to die. She wasn't that cruel. But she wasn't above seeing him lose a few teeth for what he'd done to her, her hands clenched in her lap, biting into the dark fabric of her tunic. She couldn't bring herself to shout like everyone else. But she prayed for his triumph, all the same. If he could be this brave, then surely blast it. She couldn't finish the thought. Win! She willed the thought at him instead. Kick his ass! He's become a bit of a show-off, hasn't he? Startled, she rounded on the voice. Where once there had been an empty seat to her right, she now found herself gazing at a young girl with a round face, bearing bright blue eyes and pale blonde hair. Clad in a pale white dress with matching sandals, she appeared utterly normal. At a glance, she might have even been mistaken for Ino. Indeed, Hinata was half tempted to dismiss her outright. It was only that small smirk that warned her otherwise. A normal girl wouldn't wear that kind of smile. It reminded her of a stalking predator hunting its prey. Some sixth sense shrieked in the back of her head, begging her to run. She didn't listen to it. She should have listened. Tell me, those bewitching eyes ensnared her, heart and soul. Are you Hinata Hyuga? I am? The words emerged as a question. Can I help you? Perhaps. The girl considered her for a long moment. He speaks often of you, you know. She had a strange way of speaking this one. Why did that fill her with dread? Hinata blinked fitfully. Excuse me? Naruto, of course. I confess I wanted to see you for myself. The girl ignored her gasp, instead touching one hand to her pale chin. To see the girl who roused my contractor to such righteous fury. She tittered softly at some fond memory. He's usually so peaceful, yet when he spoke of your crushing defeat he changed. This girl knew Naruto? A pang of jealousy stirred in Hinata's heart. She tried to stamp it down, to no avail. Something burned in her throat. Anger? Knowing someone else had taken interest in him. Then again, it wasn't as though she had any right to him. She'd never approached him, and the few times they'd spoken she'd nearly fainted. And what in blazes was a contractor? I wondered what you must be like, how fierce you must be to catch his eye. Pale blue eyes flitting her up and down, assessing her worth. The girl's smile became a scowl. Yet all I see before me is a weak-willed child. A stray spark of red flashed through her gaze. I am not impressed. The rebuke stung more than it should. Why, you can say whatever you want. Hinata might be a meek girl, but she bridled at the insult all the same. I think you should leave. Oh? A blonde brow rose. Do you have some spine after all? By all means, show me. Was this girl trying to test her? Seeking a rise out of her or something? Cheeky little upstart. Wait. Where had that thought come from? She tried to speak, but a hacking cough caught her out and forced her into silence as her chest spasmed. Blasted lungs. She still hadn't fully recovered from what Niji had done to her lungs. Even a month after the fact, that single strike was still the bane of her existence. Byakugan. Her eyes flared, trying to get a measure of this girl. Mistakes were made. All-seeing eyes stripped away the illusion before her. Too late, she realized this wasn't a girl at all, but rather a young woman masquerading as one. She was darkness incarnate, shadow and flame and fury. Her skin pale as the driven snow, eyes the color of blood, rich as the angry red veins throbbing in her veins. Looking at her hurt. The very vision of her stung Hinata's eyes so badly that she wanted to close them out of reflex. But in that darkness she glimpsed a thread of light, one gleaming among the dark. That thread flowed out of her in a thin river of golden luminescence, down into the arena below. She followed it with her gaze. Her eyes widened. It went to Naruto? Were they connected somehow? Was she hurting him? No, now that she looked closely, she wasn't giving him power. On the contrary, his existence seemed to be sustaining hers just as much as she did him, not some ghastly vampire feeding off his life energy. Not at all. Like a symbiote working with its host, so too did they coexist with one another. Try as she might, she couldn't think of another way to describe it, only that it was. Their very souls were bonded together by some strange jutsu magic, on a level that hers would never be with his. As if sensing her gaze, Naruto looked up at her. Red eyes narrowed against lavender. Hinata yanked the chakra away from her eyes, unable to bear the sight of it. Who are you? What have you done to him? Oh? She wasn't prepared for the laughter that followed. So those eyes of yours can see me, see the bond between me and my contractor, while others cannot. Fascinating, the woman smiled then. It caused the shadows to twist around her, taking on monstrous shapes straight out of her nightmares. Perhaps I was too quick to judge you, Hinata of the Hyuga. Still that smile didn't abate. You're not normal. There may yet be some hope for you after all. The recovering girl flinched. Though the stranger's remark hadn't been phrased as an insult, Hinata quailed beneath the weight of those words all the same. No. She wasn't normal. She was less than normal. Weak. Pathetic. Unable to live up to the weight of her clan name, a failure in every aspect of her life, trapped in an untenable position, doomed to live out the rest of her days in mediocrity. This one would not. She was strength and power, grace personified, a being who cared not a fig what others thought of her. She wanted that. She needed that. But first, she had to know. Jay, just what are you? She whispered. The demonic woman didn't continue, not at first. She merely blinked back at her, weighing the worth of speaking. Do you know me? She intoned. Do you know what I am? Do you want to know my name? Something told her not to ask. Her tongue betrayed her. Tell me. Black eyes burned with triumph. Very well. This is what I am called. The twisted being before her declared, spreading her arms wide. Immortal. She all but spat the word. Eternal, a being without end. I am forsaken. Which, mankind called me? A being from a bygone age. The very air seemed to warp with the weight of her words. I was here when your world was young and I will be here still when it crumbles into dust. A peal of distant thunder rumbled overhead, rattling the heavens themselves. I have as many names as there are winds, as many titles as there are ways to die. I was contained once, but no longer. In a flash she rounded on her, pale visage looming mere inches before hers. I am Salem. She declared at last, and the very mention of her name boiled in the air between them like a curse. Goddess of the Grim. And your world will be mine. Just like that, she leaned back and the spell was broken. As to your second question, I have made my contractor more than what he was. She made a show of inspecting her nails as Hinata continued to balk. The rest is none of your concern. He can never be yours. The words hit her like a punch to the gut more than any other. He is already mine. He simply hasn't realized it yet. What? No. Recover. Who are you to say that? Have I offended you? Salem blinked guilelessly, wearing the guise of an innocent girl once more. My apologies. A hand rose and fell, tucking a stray strand of pale hair behind her ear. This is not a threat. It is simply the truth. She tossed her head and that bewitching smile returned once more, the full confidence of a woman masquerading as a mere girl. You will never have him. His heart belongs to me. Her every instinct shrieked at her to back down. He isn't yours. By the sage, what was she saying? This woman was darkness. Death. Challenging like this only meant her end, and yet she found herself rising from her seat, standing her ground. Even as the weight of Salem's gaze crashed down on her like a physical force, she stood firm. She wanted to run. She wanted to hide, lock herself in her room and pretend this never happened. But that would mean turning her back on the abomination before her, and she would surely die if she did so. It wasn't bravery that stilled her. Oh no. It was fear. A little fight in you, Thankfully for her, Salem mistook it as the former. Her eyes sharpened. I like that. Tell me, do you seek power? Yes. A voice hissed in the back of Hinata's head. More than anything. I never want to be weak again. Even if what she says is true, I want to stand beside him. I want to be worthy of his respect. Salem laid a hand on her collarbone, well above her breasts. Hinata jerked back. What are you doing? A show of good faith. Just like that, the crushing pain in her chest abated, leaving her to breathe freely once more. Hinata sucked in a shuddering breath as a vain arm pulled away, feeling stronger than she'd ever been. Pale eyes flitted up to meet blazing red orbs, not with confusion or fear, or even hate but relief. She hadn't realized just how ill she was, how badly damaged she'd been. Her lungs pulled in fresh clean air, startling her with a gasp. Lavender orbs gazed up listlessly, flecked with confusion. Why? She whispered. Salem didn't give her an answer. We will meet again, Hinata of the Hyuga clan. 2 fingers flicked forward, poking her forehead. Now. Wake. Up. Ta! The recovered heiress blinked, realizing someone was shaking her. Eyes bleary, ears ringing, she flailed for a moment before she recognized the tattooed face belie. I what? She stifled a yawn with the back of her palm. Kiba, you dozed off for a bit there. Her teammate regarded her fretfully. You alright? I'm fine. I was talking to, The Inuzuka blinked. To who? When she turned her head, Hinata found only an empty aisle beside her. Had she truly been dreaming? It didn't seem possible. Everything had felt so real. To claim it was simply a figment of her imagination felt almost too fantastic to believe. Could someone be healed in a dream? It sounded absurd. Bespoke of silly things like magic and blessings and curses. Fairy tales. Fables. That sort of thing. Yet her body felt light again, and the air came easily to her once more. Across the way, a familiar pair of eyes found hers. Salem waved lazily. Just like that, Hinata felt her very soul turn to ice in her veins. And then, quite suddenly, the match ended. Niji was no stranger to fear. He was born in it, molded by it, raised in the knowledge that his life could be ended at any given moment if someone so chose. Just as fathers had been, the main branch lorded their power over their family every day, eager to remind him of their place. In time, he had learned to live with it. He thought himself past it. Now, for the first time in a long time, Niji Hyuga felt fear again. It was worse than he'd imagined. So much wasn't the pulse pounding in his ears that terrified him so, nor the frantic beating of his heart, though the latter certainly played a part in his anxiety. It was the knowledge that he'd been wrong. Had he been holding this power in reserve during the preliminaries? Was it all a front? Doesn't feel so good, does it? Pale fire crashed down where he'd been standing a moment before, bathing the world in eerie azure relief. He flung himself aside, hastening his pace lest he be struck down and consumed by the flame. Angry heat licked at his heels, scorching his skin as he tumbled away. His foe was toying with him, he was certain of it. Blasted blonde bastard, putting on a show for the crowds. They were eating it up. What's wrong? A low, bemused laugh answered him. You were so quick to dismiss me before. What happened to all that arrogance? A knee slammed into his chin as Naruto tanked a gentle fist strike and lashed out, sending him flying backwards. He hit the ground, tumbled, flipped himself upright to avoid a summoned Beowulf snapping at his heel, and bolted for cover before the Ursa could trample him underfoot. Not a heartbeat later, a hail of sharpened feathers from the boy's pet nevermore skewered where he'd been standing. Why are you running, Niji? Naruto sauntered after him, clawed hands flexing. Why are you running? No matter what he tried, nothing worked. Whirling away, the prodigy scaled the nearest wall in a desperate attempt to earn so much needed distance between him and his foe. He climbed to the absolute apex, and all the while his body screamed at him. His chest heaving, lungs screaming, legs begging for rest that refused to come. Niji ignored it all and frantically tried to marshal his thoughts. He needed time to think. Time to plan. Time. Never enough time. His foe was relentless, never giving him space, never enough time to think, never. But he'd be safe up here surely. Even if the fool chased him a fireball rocketed up into his face at blistering speeds. Niji dug his heels into the wall and rotated viciously, batting it away. Unfortunately, the very moment he ceased spinning, blood-red eyes flooded his vision. Niji, came the sigh. This worked once. Did you think I'd let you use it a second time? A roundhouse kick slapped him from his perch and hurled him to the ground. Armored boots entered his field of vision as he gasped for air. I want you to hit me as hard as you can. What? Now hold on. A finger rose as Niji clambered to his feet. You might have misheard me. Not half as hard, not some arbitrary percentage. He shook his head slowly, planting one hand on his hip. I want you to hit me as hard as you can. Pale arms spread wide, exposing red veins against white flesh. I'm going to give you one free shot. Hell, I won't even move from this space while you take it. Pale arms spread wide, inviting an attack, a deadly blow even. But I'm warning you, if you waste it. Niji absolutely blurred. 64 palms. He willed his scorched arm to move in tandem with the others, hammering strike after strike into the unyielding pillar before him. Each strike doubled in intensity. Each hit inflicted vicious internal injuries. He was a whirl of motion, a blur unsurpassed. Perfection personified. There could be no escape for his victim. A series of machine gun-like strikes hammered home into his torso, intensifying with each moment. Naruto took each strike soundlessly. He didn't move. Didn't budge. Even as his body shook with every blow, even as dozens of needle-like chakra spikes rammed into his body and sealed his power away, he refused to falter. Those blood-red eyes gazed down at him soullessly, weighing him, judging him. Assessing his worth, the final strike should have blown him clear off his feet. Instead, he only grunted, "You're gonna regret it." His foe finished with a sigh. Neji flung himself backward, bracing for an attack that never came. Once more those eerie red orbs followed him, narrow and intent. No. No, this wasn't possible. Even a Jonin would be in crippling pain after an attack like that. That was his best technique, the very peak of his taijutsu. He had nothing left to give, bar the rotation technique itself. How? The gap between them couldn't be this wide. It just couldn't. He raged against the thought, even as it availed him not. This was a trick of some kind. Yes. That must be it. An illusion. Release. He slapped his hands together and pulsed his chakra. The scene before him didn't waver. He tried again. Release. Nothing happened. Denying reality now, are we? A hoarse chuckle rewarded his efforts. How unlike you. How? The word tore out of him in a snarl as he slashed a hand through the air. I know I closed your chakra points. Not once, but twice. You should be writhing on the ground. I did feel them. The masked warrior rolled his shoulders, producing an awful pop deep within his chest. That last one actually tickled me a little bit, but you know what they say. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice. Naruto peeled back his jacket and began to roll up his shirt, exposing much of his torso to prying eyes. What the devil was he doing? Neji sputtered as color flooding his cheeks. His Byakugan briefly lapsed, such was his shock. High in the stands above, Kiba squawked as Hinata slumped into his arms. Naruto paid neither of them any mind. Not gonna happen. In that moment, Neji saw what lay beneath. Beheld the hardened plates of red and white bone, cracked now and crumbling away from the blonde's pallid chest. He'd hardened his skin. No, he'd simply grown that hideous armor into his very chest, uncaring of the damage he did to himself. This was grotesque. Granted, it looked to be a temporary thing meant to take a single series of attacks, but the pain he must have felt, forcing his own body to grow bone like that, just the thought, made him shudder. Monster. He stammered. You're a monster. As he looked on, the blonde rolled his shirt back down and started forward once more. Do you understand now? Niji's own words came back to haunt him as his opponent advanced, slow measured strides carving up the distance between them. This is your so-called fate. This is your destiny. You were meant to lose today. Doesn't feel so good, does it? His shadow threatened to swallow him whole. Naruto leaned forward, pressing his masked forehead to his. Well, would you look at that? He drawled. Seems you can feel fear. Something broke deep inside within Niji as he reeled away from that mask. It was his mind. No! In desperation flailed at Naruto, driving a wild strike into where he knew his heart to be, uncaring for the damage he did. It never landed. A pale fist locked around his wrist and wrenched it upright at a horrific angle. Bone creaked ominously. Pale eyes went wide. A vicious wrench dislocated his shoulder, drawing a keening whine between his teeth. Niji lashed out with the other, and the blonde repeated the process without a word. It flopped down uselessly beside his right, hanging loose and limp for all the world to see. You know, I was wondering what would break first. Your spirit, or your body. Naruto's fist swung back and the earth responded. Bits of white porcelain manifested around his arm, sheathing his fist in a stark white gauntlet. The Hyuga found himself strangely reminded of a giant hammer, and the nail it was to crash upon. He couldn't even move his arms. There was no way of blocking it. Worse, the proctor looked fit to step in at any moment. A withering glare from the monster rooted him where he stood. No, this wasn't happening. Not like this. He refused to go down like this. Let's find out. Niji shrank back from the sight of that massive fist, thinking only of flinging himself to safety. Something latched onto his legs, pinning him in place. His blind spot. He spun, hips twisting, and found a pair of baleful red orbs glaring at him. In his fear, he'd all but forgotten about the monsters Naruto summoned. One of them clung to him now, a ghastly hound-like creature gripping him by the knees. Pale eyes bulged. He couldn't move, couldn't rotate in time to free himself. Even if he could, the beast's claws all but bit into his legs, promising to tear them apart if he moved. Let me go! No. The grim grinned back at him. Good work, hound. Naruto beamed behind his mask. Hold him real still for me. Niji snarled, tossing himself from side to side in a desperate attempt to escape the attack he knew was coming. This would be a finished blow, no doubt about it. If that thing hit him, he was finished. There must be some way out of this, an option he'd not considered, a technique he hadn't bothered to try. He was destined to win here. Fate had decreed his victory, hadn't it? Clench your teeth. There was no divine intervention to change the outcome for Niji Hyuga. No last-minute savior came to his aid. There was no sagely voice in the back of his head to offer him help. No demon on his shoulder promising him power in exchange for his soul. None of these things happened. He was alone, exhausted, and outmatched. Naruto reared back. Then he swung. And it was done. A blur of white flooded Niji's vision, and quite suddenly found himself airborne once more. It was a good punch, a distant part of him mused. Clean. Quick. Efficient. He actually blacked out for a moment there. His entire body had gone slack, a helpless puppet unable to do anything but fall to the ground. He knew what would happen if he struck it at this velocity. With his body battered and his chakra reserves tattered, he held no way to soften his fall. He would hit the earth, or the wall, it mattered not. The impact was going to break his neck. Instead, a pair of strong arms caught him before he could fall. Neji already knew who they belonged to. Aghast, he glared up at his savior. Naruto glared back, dug his feet in and lowered him to the floor. Neji tried to shout at him. All that emerged was a groan. Finish me, he croaked. The match isn't over until I die or concede. Bloody eyes bored into him silently. Well? A snarl tore out of Niji's throat. What are you waiting for? A hand swept back and he tensed for the end, refusing to close his eyes against it. If this was to be his end, he would meet death head-on. Instead, those pale fingers gripped his mask and swept it aside, dispelling it in a rush of dark light. Neji squinted against it, mildly alarmed to find himself facing the same tan-skinned youth as before. His eyes shimmered with faint blue flames for a moment, but soon even those receded as he mastered himself once more. Gentle blue eyes bored into him, but no attack came. Bitter tears stung at Niji's eyes. Why? Because that's my choice, his adversary declared. I won't kill you. Even now he shamed him with his mercy. Dying's easy. Living is hard. We make our own destiny, he declared, the deep growl gone from his voice now he spoke. I sacrificed, and bled, and sweat and cried for this power. He thumped a marked hand against his chest. That's why I won today. Not 'cause of fate, or destiny, or any crap like that, but because I trained. Because I needed, to win this match. I don't understand. Neji struggled to lift his head. Where did you acquire such strength? Who knows? He was granted a rueful grin. Maybe I'll tell you someday. Just like that? He croaked. You'd share such a secret? His grin became pure, almost boyish. Sure, why not? After all, without so much as another word, he dropped him and walked away. Neji couldn't even lift his chin to scowl at his back. He was too spent even for that. Belatedly, it occurred to him that the blonde wasn't going to finish him off at all. Even after all that torment, Naruto had gone out of his way to avoid killing him. Perhaps he'd been wrong after all. Could fate be overcome? Could destiny be overturned? One final parting shot took what little remained of his pride and smashed it to pieces. If I can change my destiny, so can you. Maybe he'd been right after all. The sweet blackness of exhaustion took him. Winner! He heard the proctor declare just before he blacked out. Naruto Uzumaki. Kill him? Oh, my dear. By all means. Try. Ostracize him. Tear him apart. Incinerate him. Like a phoenix, he'll rise from the ashes of his old life. And then? He'll burn your world. Salem, so nice to meet me. Naruto returned to the stands feeling like a champion. Several clapped him on the back as he climbed the steps, shouting congratulations in his wake. Evidently he'd won them a great deal of money. The notion that people had actually bet on him winning would have alarmed him once, but he had a feeling he knew who instigated it. This had Salem's handiwork all over it. Leave it to her to organize a betting ring while he beat Neji senseless. Heh. It was just like her to profit of another's misery like this. From the sound of it, she'd made more than a tidy sum today. No doubt she'd saved him a portion of their winnings. Almost brought a tear to his eye, that did. He noticed other faces as he ascended. Not all of them were pleasant. Women gazed at him as if he were a different person, some strange foreign creature they didn't know what to make of. A lifetime ago, he would have basked in such attention and craved more. Now he knew it for what it was. They didn't care that who he was, where he came from, or any such thing. No, they were only interested in him now because he'd won. Nothing more, nothing less. Fickle creatures. Had he truly been that blind? His gaze roamed the crowds as he ascended, idly trailing over faces. He only had a few minutes before they called the next match and needed to get a move on. A flash of red collided with his shoulder. Instinct compelled him to turn with the blow rather than against it, catching the one responsible in his arms. Even then, the impact drove him back a pace. Hey, be careful. He chided. You almost knocked me down. I'm sorry. A small voice muttered into his chest. They raised their head and gazed up at him. Time slowed to a crawl. For a moment, a sliver of a second, Naruto felt his vision sharpen. Silver eyes met his, framed by a strange red hood. He couldn't comprehend their face entirely in the shadows of their cowl, but he could see their mouth. No. Her mouth. It was a girl. Her pale face was set in a scowl fixed solely on him. She was short, too. Really short. Her head barely came up to his chest, which was ironic, because before his growth spurt he'd been little more than a runt himself. But this girl? She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Naruto reached out for her. Hey, are you alright? No. She slapped his hand out of the air with an anguished cry. Don't touch me. You're like her. Murderer. Excuse me? Naruto all but choked on the accusation. Murderer? Him? He hadn't slain a single soul. A muscle jumped in his jaw, but he resisted the urge to bite back at the strange girl. Just who was she? Before he could think to do anything else, she skittered backward and vanished in a swirl of motion. Only rose petals remained in her wake. One of them landed on his outstretched hand and turned to ash in his palm. He turned his hand upside down and let it drain out onto the floor. Who was that? Shaking his head, he carried on. Thankfully, others were happy to see him. Ha! He sensed Kiba coming long before he slung an arm around his shoulder. He allowed what followed, grateful for the distraction. There you are, you magnificent bastard. I knew you had it in you. Geez. Not so tight. Naruto laughed despite himself and wriggled free from the Inuzuka's grasp. Whatever bad blood they'd had between them after the preliminaries appeared to have evaporated with Niji's defeat. Fine by him. Kiba was a good friend, just like Shikamaru and Choji. He might have changed, but he didn't want to lose them, and if they weren't going to judge him based on his new skill set, well, all the better. As far as the world knew, he'd acquired a few new jutsu and a fresh summoning contract. Such an assumption wouldn't last forever, but he was content to prop up the lie where he could. Hey, you hit a growth spurt or something? His friend peered up at him. Don't remember you being this tall. He had no idea. Naruto was content to keep it that way, you might say that. Atop Kiba's head, Akamaru leaned forward to inspect him. The pup yipped once and gave his cheek a quick lick. Naruto laughed and ruffled the dog's fur, another test he'd been worried about. Some animals had come to fear him since his change. Dogs, at least, were still keen on him. He'd take what he could these days. Oh ho! His friend saw his smirk and elbowed him with a grin. I thought there was a strange scent on you. Anything you want to tell me? Lots of things. Nothing he would understand or accept. Kiba wouldn't understand the concept of magic or aura, much less someone like Salem. Moreover, he'd been asked to keep this secret. Naruto was a man of his word. If he ran around blabbing secrets, he'd have the Hokage's eyes on him by the end of the day. The old man would have questions of his own. Refusing them meant treason. One thing would lead to another, and even a blind man could see the outcome come from a mile away. Salem, or loyalty to the village. One day, he would have to choose. Naruto didn't want to choose. He wanted to stay here, with his friends, for as long as he could. Instead he settled for a smile and jammed both hands into his pockets. Nope. Ah, come on. Kiba needled. Not gonna introduce me to your new friend? That small smile grew another inch. Nope. She'd eat you alive. Bah, you're impossible. Come on. Hina's waiting. Naruto let the Inuzuka lead him up a level, if only because he had an inkling of what his friend intended. Sure enough, they found Hinata fidgeting a few seats above. Her squirming redoubled when she saw their approach, and she looked fit to bolt. Poor girl. All told, she looked better. Not quite recovered, but better. She was breathing normally and seemed to sit a little straighter under his gaze. Good. That meant there was some hope for her career. Had someone healed her? She was healthy, to his senses. Almost too healthy. A flash of dark amusement pulsed through his mind, courtesy of Salem. Naruto pounced on it. What did you do? I? Her voice feigned a wounded tone. You wound me, dear contractor. I would never hurt one so pure. Bullshit. Salem did what she pleased, when she pleased, where she pleased. He could hear the smile in her words. What? Did you? Do, if you must know, I found a seed and decided to nurture it. Silken laughter brushed the back of his mind. By all means see for yourself. Here he is, your majesty. Heedless of their diatribe, Kiba grinned and nudged him forward with an elbow. The hero of the hour. Why don't you give your knight a kiss? Hinata looked fit to burst. Kiba. Now that Naruto knew what to look for, he could clearly see that there was something there. Pale eyes flitted to his, then down to the floor again when he caught her staring. Naruto winced. One simply did not train under Salem and Hazel without learning a few things. It wasn't hard to tell she was holding a torch for him that he failed to notice spoke volumes for his past self. Dents didn't even begin to describe that. If he could go back a month, he'd throttle himself. Had he really been that blind? Yo. He flashed a cheery wave her way instead. How are you feeling? Pale eyes blinked upon him. Widened. Looked up. Tall. She murmured in awe. Naruto blinked. That was twice someone had remarked on it now. Was he really that tall? Didn't feel like it. And no, it's nothing. A small, tentative smile bloomed on her pale face. I'm feeling much better, thank you. She looked away, started to tent her fingers, then stopped herself. Huh. That was new. She always did that. She swallowed once, shook her head, then mastered herself. I'm glad you spared Niji's life. He didn't deserve. Her lips pursed in a grimace. He shouldn't have to die. On that they agreed. Death was final. You couldn't learn from your mistakes if they got you killed. Time would tell if Niji learned the error of his ways. If he did, great. If he decided to clamp down and cling to his old ways, well, another knock about the head would set him to rights. Maybe. Hopefully? Meh. He'd burn that bridge when he came to it. But Hinata was still looking at him most intently. The abilities you used in your match. She looked over his shoulder, almost as if she saw something there, before looking back to him. Is it possible to learn such power? Naruto blinked rapidly. Oh. Oh ho. Oh ho ho. Realization broke like the dawn. So that was Salem's game. He wasn't opposed to it. He didn't dislike Hinata. Frankly, he wasn't sure what he felt towards her. Even as a part of him felt flattered by the attention, another larger part wondered why. Salem's training wasn't for the weak of wills nor the faint of heart. Why show an interest in Hinata at all? Did she intend to cultivate her skills, or did she have another, more sinister purpose for her? He wouldn't allow the latter, and surely Salem knew better than to try such a thing. In the end, his mouth betrayed him of its own accord. Not from a ninja. Salem's laugh split the back of his head. Well said, contractor. I'll put a word in a good for you. Hinata perked up. Really? Kiba scratched the back of his head. What, you saying you got trained by a samurai or something? Good boy, Kiba. He'd given him an excuse without even trying. Naruto felt no need to correct him. He could believe what he wanted. Let me know if Niji or your clan tries anything else. He ignored him and smacked a fist into an open palm, producing an audible pop. Just give a holler, and I'll come running. Hinata sucked in a sharp breath through her teeth. Maybe that was a poor choice of words on his part. Meh. Too late to take him back now. Might as well make the most of it while he could. On a whim, Naruto darted back in, dipped down and pulled the poor girl in for a quick hug. Sure enough, the Hyuga's face turned a lovely shade of red and she looked fit to faint all over again. Something unfolded in him. No, that wouldn't do. He pushed his forehead against hers, commanding her attention and forcing her back to wakefulness. Blue eyes blazed into lavender. You're gonna be amazing someday. He grinned. I just know it. I'll see you after the exams. Gibberish flowed from her mouth. Oh dear. Had he broken her? He let go and Hinata jerked back as if she'd been scalded. Kiba laughed, but was already away before either could think to reel him in again. Mission accomplished. Really, the look on Hinata's face was just too precious. Too good. Too pure. Almost like a little sister. Made him want to protect her, you know? He saw Sakura in a nearby seat and nodded once, moving past her. She at least looked like she wanted to say something, but he was in a hurry, and then, quite suddenly, there she was. It would seem congratulations are in order, dear boy. Salem was waiting for him near the top of the stands. Her words riveted him. At least he assumed it was Salem in disguise, because no young girl would willingly get this close to a band of foreign shinobi without batting an eyelash, much less talk to him like that. Her disguise looked good. Really, it did. Perhaps that had been her true appearance long ago before she'd been corrupted. Naruto still didn't like it. Because it wasn't her. No, the Salem he knew was all pale skin and ashen hair, eyes like rubies, a smile like sin itself. But the rapturous expression on her face right now, that wasn't fake at all. She looked like he wanted to devour him. In all honesty, it was a little frightening and intoxicating. Hey! Naruto preened as he climbed the last of the steps. How did I do? Sakura had never feared Naruto before. Until now, that was undoubtedly her teammate walking up the steps towards her. There could be no doubt about that. His smile was the same. His face was the same. Even his chakra was just as she remembered it. Warm. Gentle. Kind. Sure, he'd grown a few inches. Maybe gained a bit of muscle. He may looked a little older, and the quiet confidence in his gait alarmed her as did his new outfit. But despite all that, these subtle colors of navy gray and black spoke well for him. To a passerby, he seemed much as he had always been, yet his eyes were different. Sakura had been his teammate long enough to see the changes there. Those azure orbs still true and blue, but they seemed brighter somehow. Sharper than she remembered, downright deadly. He looked over the crowd and dismissed them, even as a few happy bettors clapped him on the back. Naruto didn't shout or scream his victory to the heavens. There was no need. His actions spoke for themselves. But those eyes. Sakura couldn't stop looking at his eyes, and he was headed her way. Sakura straightened her back imperceptibly and ran a hand through her hair, then immediately cursed herself for the... What was she fussing for? It was just Naruto. Why was her heart beating so fast? She tried to speak as he drew within earshot, but his gaze rolled right over her. He nodded once and walked past. Like she wasn't even there. She'd soon learn why. It would seem congratulations are in order, contractor. A soft, indulgent voice crooned only a row behind her. Her ears perked up. That was a girl's voice. Naruto? With a girl? What madness was this? Hey! He called to someone a few rows up. How did I do? Sakura turned subtly in her seat to find them. No. Surely not. Naruto couldn't have. He didn't have it in him to woo someone. Imagine her surprise then when she found a girl with striking aqua eyes waiting for him. At a glance she wasn't much to look at. Pale hair of spun gold framed her face and a simple white sundress sheathed her slim form. She was all smiles, however, as she stretched her arms out to Naruto. Sakura nearly choked on her spit when he walked right into her embrace. You were marvelous. The girl hummed, nuzzling his neck. I believe you deserve a reward. With that said, she pushed him down into the seat she just vacated and sat in his lap, pinning him there. A few bystanders turned a bemused look at the teenagers, but none challenged them. Perhaps that had something to do with the absolute giant of a man who sat beside the girl. By the sage, that man was built. Salem, come on. Naruto rolled his eyes in mild sufferance. I can't stay up here for long, you know. As if sensing that thought, she smiled. Then your reward will be brief this time. Salem kissed him and pulled him into a fierce embrace. Her chin appeared over his shoulder, and quiet suddenly, Sakura found herself under the scrutiny of those piercing aqua orbs. She bristled at having been caught out, but the other girl raised a finger for silence. Oh, maybe she wasn't so bad after all. Salem's lips curled around a single silent syllable. Mine. For a fleeting moment, those pale robes flashed red and the whites of eyes burned black. The poor Kunoichi shrank back, though her adversary made no move to speak, much less attack. But the blonde smiled all the same. It was a dark, dangerous thing, a grin that promised dark secrets, and great power if you were willing to pay a price. Look upon him and know what you have lost, child. A voice like honeyed poison brushed her mind. If you ever strike him again, I will kill you. And he'll never know. Just like that, her presence retreated. Sakura blinked rapidly and scrubbed at her eyes with the back of her hands. When she looked again, the girl's eyes were pale once more. Salem wasn't even looking at her anymore. Her attention was fixed firmly on Naruto as she chatted with him, her imagination then. Surely it must be. She looked away, trying to ignore the pang of doubt that followed. What was that just now? Where was the boy who had fussed and fawned over her for as long as she remembered? He'd found someone. She shouldn't care. If anything, it means she would finally be rid of his persistent attempts to ask her out. And yet a worm of jealousy burrowed its way into her heart. He had improved, and she was being left behind. She could close the gap, surely. Something told her she couldn't. The poor girl shivered and hugged both arms to herself. When had she lost him? Salem was up to something. Naruto knew in his bones, but for the life of him he couldn't figure out what it was. He wasn't stupid. Once was an accident, twice a coincidence, but 3 times? No, that was intentional. Queen or not, she had gone out of her way, already messed about with poor Yugao, talked to then subsequently healed hinata in order to pique her interest, and now she was glaring bloody red daggers at Sakura over his shoulder. If she thought he was blind to all that, she had another thing coming. He wasn't stupid. He knew she was plotting. Not that she gave him much time to dwell on it overmuch. What are you up to? I know not of what you speak. Salem reclined languidly on his lap with a smile, delighting in his discomfort. Can we not simply enjoy ourselves until your next match? His lips quirked. Greedy girl. She laughed and slapped his chest. You know me well. Sometimes, Naruto wondered about that. Magic was strange. Shape-shifting so far beyond the basic transformation jutsu was yet stranger still. Illusions were the strangest of all. Salem had mastered all 3 during her long captivity beneath the earth. For all intensive purposes she was a teenager again. They both knew she wasn't, but as he'd learned, Salem loved her games. Since her resurrection she liked to pretend, to put on airs, try her hand at things she'd never done before. It was honestly a little endearing. This is a novel sensation. She hummed, leaning against his chest. Yes. I rather like it. Why did I not think to try this in my last life, to simply savor the simple pleasures of live? All that time, all that rage, all that anger wasted. He heard Salem click her tongue, but couldn't see her expression. Eternity is a heavy thing indeed. I'll not waste this second chance. Naruto felt a shadow fall over his thoughts. Just how bad was your first life? You know enough of it. I never had a childhood. Grave eyes looked up to regard him with something akin to nostalgia. My father saw to that. By the time Ozma rescued me from that tower, I was a young woman. From there, my life was a whirlwind. First with him, then the gods, and later vengeance. It never occurred to me to try my hand at such a life. Perhaps I should have. With a huff, she leaned forward to regard the teeming masses below. Ozma freed me from a tower. One hand rose to touch his cheek, guiding his gaze to follow hers. You unbound me from the earth. He offered me his hand. You did the same. You're alike in a way. A faint longing in her voice stirred something in him. For a time I feared that he might reincarnate in you, that I'd be doomed to the same dance all over again. Salem must have seen the surprise on his face too, because she hastened to explain. But unlike him, you have proven yourself. You were willing to adapt. She turned in his lap, pushed herself up and kissed his scarred chin. To bend without breaking. Another kiss followed the first, her lips trailing over his whiskered face in a smoldering line. To listen? Closer now. To understand. Close. To be that which he could never be. Closest. If I were to compare the 2 of you now, one was water and the other wine. Her nose brushed his, breath warm against his face as her legs settled on either side of him, pinning him where he sat. You, dear contractor, are that fine wine. Her eyes flashed red for a moment as she leaned in. And I intend to savor every drop. In full view of everyone, Salem deliberately grabbed him by the face and yanked him forward, pressing her lips to his. She kissed him fiercely, running her tongue over his to silence him. Damn, but she was good at that. A few catcalls and whistles filled the air. He didn't even have it in him to glower at those responsible. Salem loved her spectacles and speeches. She'd meant her every word. She pulled away suddenly, regarding him with lidded eyes. There. Does that make my intentions clear? Naruto managed a dopey grin. Yup. Hazel leaned over and clapped him on the back then, nearly knocking the wind along with any further response from his lungs. By the sage, he hit hard. Well done. The older man rumbled. You showed admirable restraint down there. Naruto wheezed out a laugh as Salem chuckled. Thanks. Hazel never liked killing. Yet he served someone like Salem, who would happily massacre any who stood against her. Didn't that make him a hypocrite? Probably. Best not to think about it. He'd give himself a headache. It didn't matter anyway. Hazel was on Salem's side and that made him an ally. If he didn't want to kill others, Naruto was happy to oblige him. He was content here, sated even. But he still worried. What was her endgame? Hazel wasn't a killer, yet he'd seen the man fell trees with a single punch. The man could be a gentle giant, but also a terrifying one. Where did he factor into Salem's plans? What? A sudden chime overhead cut that though off. Will all combatants please return to the lower stands? A neutral voice proclaimed. I repeat, all combatants please return to the lower stands for the next match. Well, they were bound to notice his absence sooner rather than later. Naruto blew out a sigh and stood. I'd best be getting back. Salem yanked him back for another bruising kiss. Be wary of the sand wielder, she warned, pulling away a moment later. He's not right in the head. You know what he wields, a monster. Just like his. He fought down a bitter grimace at the reminder. Figured that out already, and one more thing. She tugged at his wrist. I want you to win. Now it was Naruto's turn to blink. Wait, what? I want you to win the exams. Salem repeated, lounging back in her seat as though it were her own personal throne. Do so and I will reward you beyond measure. He couldn't quite hide the sly smile that followed. I dunno, I'm already feeling pretty blessed. Full lips brushed his ear as she whispered dark secrets to him. Belay that. I'll kick all their asses. She laughed softly. You'd better. Salem gave him a shove and he made his way back down, clearing 2 steps at a time in his haste to return. Whose match was next? In all honesty, he couldn't remember. If memory served, it was Sasuke's turn, but he'd not seen hide nor hair of his teammate. Surely he wasn't going to pull a Kakashi and show up late. Not here. Now with world watching, Shikamaru found him next. Nice fight. His friend yawned as he slipped down to the stands with the other competitors. Pretty sure Hinata's gonna be over the moon after seeing that. More and more, Naruto suspected why. It was a subject he'd rather not broach right now, least of all with prying ears lurking hereabouts. Meh. He forced himself to shrug instead. I had a grudge against him, too. Felt good to knock him down a couple of pegs. The Hyuga clan won't like that. Something bridled in him. I left him alive, didn't I? That's not the point. A finger sought his chest. You made a fool of Neji out there. He's only a branch member. How do you think the main branch will react to this? They wouldn't, if they knew what was good for them. Did he care? Not at all. He'd made his point, and no further quarrel with them. With a little luck, Neji would learn from this and become a better person. If his clan tried something well, no matter how mighty their all-seeing eyes may be, the Hyuga techniques meant less than spit in the face of Salem's power. His power. He wasn't so arrogant as to believe he faced someone of a high Jonin level and emerge unscathed, not yet. But he favored his chances if anyone tried anything. That wasn't a threat. It was simply the truth. Shikamaru didn't like what he saw in his face just then. Are you alright? What? Naruto blinked. Yeah? I feel fine. Better than fine, I can tell. You've gotten stronger. Danger, danger. Deflect. Deny. Well, you know how it is. Push-ups, sit-ups, plenty of juice. That sort of thing. At the end of the day, Naruto considered Shika a friend. One of the few he had. Lazy bastard though he might be at times, the Nara wasn't stupid. On the contrary, he was terribly clever. That was the problem. He knew something was off about all. Something in him had changed, and he feared it wasn't for the better. She have anything to do with it? His gaze traveled Salem up in the stands, still hiding in plain sight. You could say that. Naruto hedged. She motivated me. That so? Naruto swore softly. Did he know? Did he suspect? He hadn't exactly been settled down there, but he hadn't gone out of his way to out himself either. He'd been hoping foolishly perhaps that most would write off his new tricks as new jutsu of some kind. Luckily, most of them had done just that. Shikamaru hadn't yet. Didn't look like he was willing to either. And what he suspected, others might as well. Salem would kill him if she thought herself threatened. Come on, just drop it, Shika. He willed the thought at him. Don't get involved in this. Alright, the prodigy released another jaw-popping yawn. You don't want to talk about it. That's fair. But do you have to keep that damn bird around? As if summoned by that very thought, Raven swooped down from the rafters and alight upon Naruto's shoulder with a proud caw. Oh. Right. He hadn't set her back with the others. In all honesty, he'd forgotten about his bird in the chaos that followed. But she hadn't forgotten him. Nor did she appreciate Shikamaru's slight, beady red eyes focused on him with hawkish intent. The Nara shrank back half a pace. Hey, I didn't choose her. Naruto shrugged. She chose me. Also, no, Raven. Bad birdie. No pecking his eyes out. Its beak clicked open in silent anger. Stupid boy. If I had arms, I'd tear his eyes out. Naruto patted her head. Vicious little thing, isn't she? Little? He raised his arm and she took off in a plume of dark feathers, arrowing back toward Salem with an angry squawk. Really, she was a chatty thing, almost as if she'd been human once. That was impossible, of course. He only knew of two Grimm who could talk, and he'd not unleashed the hound on his worst enemy. Suppose I'm rambling again. Shaking his head, he pushed such thoughts aside. Perspective was a funny thing. Once he had been weak, but now he was strong. There were no strings that came with it. Salem had given him her gifts freely. The once dead art of magic now lived again through him. Heat burned in his veins, teeming with it alongside the strength of the Grimm. Most would have lost themselves in such power, drowned in avarice and greed. Yet he hadn't, he didn't. And he wouldn't. Naruto knew who he was, what he wanted, and how to get it. He was just a little more determined now. If his heart was a little harder, and his eyes a bit colder, then surely that was a small price to pay. He was still himself for the most part. With this power he could protect everyone. Surely a few dark looks were well worth it so long as he was able to safeguard his precious people. Belatedly, he realized the next match hadn't been called yet. And there was still no sign of Sasuke. What was keeping him? His brow furrowed. Well, Duckbutt's gonna be disqualified if he doesn't show up. Yeah, about that. Shikamaru looked away with a grimace. I don't know how to break this to you, but they're probably going to disqualify him. There was an accident. The news hit him like a physical blow in the chest. What? Didn't know much about it. His friend hedged, leaning against the railing. Only what I heard from my old man. They said it had something to do with a jutsu gone wrong. That's not all. Puppet boy over there, he jerked his head toward the Sand siblings, went and forfeited his match against Shino. Before it was even announced, he gave up just before you came down here. Said he wasn't up to fighting. Blue eyes narrowed. Then why come here at all? No idea, but I don't like it. I'll be going against his sister, but there's a good chance you'll be called up after. Naruto blew out a weary sigh. I'm gonna have to fight that Sand bastard, aren't I? Shika patted his back. Don't be like that, there's still a few matches to go. A sudden wave of killing intent lodged the words in his throat. Once, Naruto would have balked under such pressure. Now? It felt like a cool breeze. This was nothing compared to what he'd endured. He'd stared down death and evil incarnate. What was the anger of a surly shinobi to that? Sure enough, he turned to find a certain redhead glaring at him. You! Cold green eyes locked onto him like a heat-seeking jutsu. Why didn't you kill him? Naruto blinked. Excuse me? It took a moment for his mind to click. He remembered this one. Gaara of the Sand. Unfortunately it wasn't a fond memory. Bones cracking. Lee screaming. Sand coffin. If Niji was a bully, then this one was a monster. He had been terrified of him before Salem's training. Now? Fear had become something else altogether. His vision flickered red for a moment before he got a hold of himself. An arm rose, waving Shikamaru back. He was more than happy to take the chance to retreat. His shadows could stop Gaara, but not his sand. Naruto took the chance to step forward regardless, placing himself firmly between them. The Hyuga. Gaara growled the word. You spared him. Why? Naruto wrinkled his nose. Because I wanted to? I do not understand. Far from calming the demented boy, his response only agitated him. You could have killed him. Crushed him. Ground him to paste. His voice took on a pained note as he clutched his forehead. Yet you let him live. What purpose does he serve if left alive? If he killed Niji, Hinata would never forgive him. Moreover, Niji wasn't evil. Just misguided. He wasn't about to share his inner thoughts with a psychopath, however. Not after what he did to Lee. Killing isn't my way. Instead, he pushed past him. I don't have to answer to you. Gaara gave him 5 steps. Then you are weak. Naruto froze. Excuse me? Weak. Gaara rasped the word as Naruto pivoted on his heel, unaware of the slumbering dragon he'd inadvertently woken. When we fight today, I will kill you. Dull green eyes shone when he looked at him, brimming with bloodlust. That girl will not save you. Mother will savor her death just as much as yours. Crunch. In hindsight, Naruto wasn't sure what compelled him to lash out. Maybe it was anger. Perhaps it was pride. Or maybe, just maybe, it was something else. Without Salem, he was nothing. If they hadn't met, he never would have gained this incredible power. Never come to understand her. Worse, she would have stayed at the bottom of ravine. Lost and forgotten. Seething in silence, her mind slowly breaking in her prison until exile drove her mad. A lonely life. Similar to his, yet so much worse. Unbidden, he recalled her smile. You are mine and I am yours. And this boy dared, To say he would kill her? The nerve. The gall. His world went red. In a seamless blur of green and silver he moved. His forehead slammed against Gaara's, cracking his sand armor to draw a startled flinch from the redhead. Red eyes rimmed by black Scara met startled green. His mouth split in a snarl, exposing sharpened fangs. His inner grim was showing. He didn't care. He had good reason to dislike Gaara before. But now? Would never forgive this boy. Not until he brought him low. That's big talk for a one-trick pony that nearly lost in the preliminaries, Gaara growled. I will savor your blood. Naruto felt the fingers of his right hand begin to twitch. Dark power boiled up inside of him, eager to rip and tear. He had but to let it out. It would be so easy to kill Gaara. He was faster now, faster than Lee ever was. The sand wouldn't be able to stop him in time. It would be so simple. Just reach in, grab him by the neck and… No! He stamped his anger down before it could consume him. I'm not a slave to this power. I won't let it control me. He couldn't strike with his fists. Not here. Not yet, when he ran the risk of disqualification. But there was another avenue of attack open to him. Salem's insight was vast, and she had revealed many things to him over the last month. He knew what Gaara was. What he contained. Moreover, his mind had sharpened in days gone by. He wasn't some petulant child to lose himself over an insult. No. He held jabs of his own. With the anger gone from his mind, a new emotion was born. One hand swept forward, clamping down on Gaara's shoulder like an iron vice to pull him close. I pity you. Sure enough, Gaara flinched. What? It must be a terrible thing to grow up so angry. Naruto pressed the attack, watching the boy's brow begin to twitch. So bitter. So alone. Maybe that's why you're always so angry. Gaara tried to squirm away, but he had him now, and there was no escape. That's all right, Gaara. I understand. I forgive you. You don't have to prove anything to me. His fingers squeezed, bruising the boy's shoulder. We'll fight, fair and square. May the best monster win. Sand lashed out at him, forcing him to disengage. You know nothing. I'll kill you. I know enough. Naruto's grin grew as he skipped back out of reach. More than enough, really. His sandals bit into the ground, grinding his retreat to a halt. You've had a bad life. So what? Mine was rotten too. You're a Jinchuriki. What of it? I'm the same. He jerked a thumb at his chest. Haven't let that keep me down either. Gaara glared bloody green daggers at him, but rather than strike again, his anger cooled. Then you are a fool. Yup. He was. A fool among fools, consorting with the Queen of Evil and trying to change her. Sure am. Laughing, he spread his arms wide. Yet here I stand. One of the Sand siblings, the blonde, balked at him. You're cracked. Me? Insane? No, no, no. You haven't seen anything yet. Still smiling, Naruto shook his head and walked away before the redhead could get a word in edgewise. You may think you know what a monster is, Gaara. You have no idea. And when our match comes around? He paused and turned his head, knowing the effect it would have on them. Well, then for a moment, just a moment, a fraction of a second, a blood-red iris peeked over his shoulder. I'm going to show you despair. Without another word or warning, killing intent shot through the arena, a targeted wave launched squarely at Gaara, then Kankuro and Temari behind him. Gaara flinched, eyes widening, shoulders spasming in surprise. His siblings fared even worse. They witnessed their deaths a dozen times, saw their bodies beaten and flayed, their hearts torn out, their everything pulped beyond recognition. No one else felt it, only them. He cut it a moment later, leaving the two of them a quivering wreck. As for Gaara? He didn't speak. Didn't move at all. He just stared. Stared and smiled like he'd found a new plaything to break. I retract my previous statement. He spoke slowly, the words a dull rasp. Uzumaki. I will relish our fight. It was not at all the reaction Naruto wanted. He scowled and stalked back the way he'd come. Fine. If it was a fight Gaara wanted, then a fight he would get. He wouldn't be smiling by the end. What if Naruto had Dragon Summon contract in Ruby? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel. And leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.